Imagine suspended animation, where the terrifying act of falling transforms into a perfectly serene, eternal glide high above the edge of the atmosphere. You're hurtling through the dark at a staggering 5 miles every single second, yet you feel entirely motionless within your heavy, pressurized cocoon of white fabric. Far below your boots, the sapphire heart of the planet turns in complete, magnificent silence, offering a mesmerizing display of vibrant oceans and swirling weather systems that endlessly miss the ground. Picture a reality where the gentle transition of twilight simply does not exist, replaced instead by a world where day and night violently collide. Sunrises detonate across the curved horizon with a silent, incandescent intensity, shattering the orbital night every 45 minutes without a single drop of atmosphere to soften the incoming light. This staggering visual panorama unfolds perfectly simultaneously, with the loudest, most overwhelming physical silence imaginable to the human ear. Surprisingly, to navigate this infinite destination is not to walk, but to gently crawl hand over hand along cold, golden rails while managing the invisible momentum of immense mass. Every physical action requires an equal and opposite reaction, turning the most complex technological achievements of our entire species into a slow, deliberate and highly calculated ballet. Here, looking outward into the terrifying bottomless depths of the cosmos, inevitably forces the fragile human mind to look deeply inward, permanently dissolving all petty earthly biases. If we were to look closer at your own resting body right now, we would find that you are perfectly grounded, anchored securely by the comforting, familiar pull of gravity. You're safe, enveloped entirely in the quiet warmth of your bed, resting light years away from the freezing cosmic shadows and the blinding, unfiltered solar glare. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, a vast, floating dreamscape of high-altitude miracles waiting patiently to unfold behind your heavy, closing eyelids. Release the remaining tension in your hands and shoulders, allowing your breathing to slow and perfectly match the peaceful, steady rhythm of a world turning silently in the dark. The journey outward into this magnificent abyss begins not with a sudden, violent leap, but with a slow, deliberate shedding of the familiar, breathable atmosphere you know so intimately well. Deep within the airlock, the final depressurization marks the true beginning of the orbital journey. Deep within the airlock, the final depressurization marks the true beginning of the orbital journey. The heavy metallic hiss of pumps drawing the last remnants of breathable air away creates a profound psychological threshold between the known world and the endless void. As the pressure gauge drops toward absolute zero, the thick fabric of the spacesuit begins to stiffen, inflating into a rigid human-shaped spacecraft. Every agonizingly slow breath echoes loudly inside the fishbowl helmet, amplifying the utter isolation that waits just beyond the heavy aluminum hatch. This transitional chamber is a quiet purgatory, where the comforting embrace of Earth is systematically stripped away, leaving only mechanical reliance. The sharp contrast of pale artificial light and deep shadows stretching across the cramped cylindrical walls heightens the intense sensory anticipation of the crossing. When the heavy outer door finally unlocks and swings outward, it does not reveal a sky, but rather an infinite bottomless drop. The mind struggles to comprehend the sheer scale of the silent expanse that instantly floods the visual field. Stepping through this gateway is an irrevocable commitment to surviving in a realm entirely hostile to human biology. Surprisingly, the universe outside has a distinct scent, often described as seared steak or hot metal, clinging to the suit afterward. While it is physically impossible to smell the vacuum directly, the highly reactive atomic oxygen present in low Earth orbit aggressively binds to the fabric and metal surfaces of the extravehicular mobility unit. When the astronaut returns to the safety of the pressurized airlock and the outer hatch is sealed, the repressurization process allows these lingering chemical compounds to finally mix with breathable air. Taking off the helmet reveals a pungent, sharp odor that has permeated the entire cramped space. Seasoned orbital mechanics compare this strange, lingering perfume to the smell of welding fumes, spent gunpowder, or a harsh ozone electrical fire. It is a visceral, olfactory reminder of the violent, invisible radiation and raw elements constantly bombarding the exterior of the orbital outpost. This lingering fragrance fundamentally changes the perception of the cosmos from an abstract, sterile emptiness into a physical, almost tangible environment. The smell serves as a rare sensory bridge between the deadly expanse outside and the fragile, breathable haven inside. Every spacewalking crew carries this metallic scent back with them, a temporary ghost of the star-filled vacuum. If we were to look closer, the first glimpse out the hatch reveals a sky completely devoid of atmospheric scattering. On our home planet, the thick blanket of oxygen and nitrogen scatters the shorter, blue wavelengths of sunlight, painting a bright, reassuring canopy over our heads. Above the atmosphere, this protective optical illusion vanishes completely, replaced by an unforgiving, unfiltered window straight into the terrifying depths of the cosmos. The sheer visual clarity is both magnificent and deeply disorienting to a brain evolved to rely on aerial perspective to judge distance. Without the familiar haze of a breathable atmosphere, objects miles away appear just as sharp and vivid as the metallic handrails mere inches from the visor. This total absence of atmospheric interference creates an incredibly crisp, high-definition reality that strains the limits of human optical perception. Carefully, tether hooks click securely, providing a physical lifeline to the massive metallic station. This simple mechanical action is the single most critical maneuver in the entire extravehicular sequence, anchoring a fragile human life to thousands of tons of orbiting aluminum. The braided steel and synthetic fiber lines are the only things preventing an irreversible drift into the endless, silent ocean of deep space. Every movement outside the airlock requires a deliberate, methodical choreography of attaching and detaching these vital safety tethers. The heavy, pressurized gloves make the seemingly mundane task of opening a metal carabiner feel like squeezing a stiff rubber ball, demanding constant forearm strength. Hearing the dull, muffled thud of the latch locking into place through the vibrations of the suit brings a fleeting moment of profound psychological relief. Moving along the exterior truss requires maintaining two separate anchor points at all times, ensuring that at least one hook is always holding fast. The lines slowly unspool and retract with a slight continuous tension, acting as an artificial umbilical cord to the mothership. Without this precise, unyielding connection, a simple slip of the fingers would easily result in a quiet, terminal separation from humanity. Without air to diffuse it, raw sunlight strikes the outer visor with piercing, overwhelming intensity. This unfiltered solar radiation is vastly more powerful and dangerous than anything ever experienced on a bright summer day back on the planetary surface. The sheer brilliance of the star is enough to instantly cause permanent retinal damage if an astronaut were to glance at it without heavy protection. The light carries an immense, brutal heat that immediately begins to bake the outer layers of the extravehicular suit upon exposure. Shadows cast by the station's sprawling solar arrays and cylindrical modules are not the soft grey gradients we're accustomed to seeing. Instead, the boundary between the blinding, incandescent daylight and the ink-black shade is razor-sharp, creating a visually jarring environment of pure extremes. Navigating this high-contrast landscape forces the human eye to constantly and painfully adjust between blinding glare and total obscurity. Reflections off the white thermal blankets and polished aluminum debris shields can suddenly flash with the intensity of a welding torch. This raw, undiluted stellar energy serves as a constant, harsh reminder of the sun's absolute dominance over the inner solar system. Pitch blackness dominates the vast sky, even when the sun is shining brightly overhead. This deep, unyielding void forms the omnipresent backdrop of the orbital experience, entirely devoid of the ambient light that gently fills the shadows on Earth. Because there are no floating particles, dust or moisture to catch and bounce the solar rays, the space between objects remains perfectly, terrifyingly dark. Looking away from the blinding reflection of the space station, an astronaut peers into a bottomless abyss that seems to actively absorb all surrounding light. The stars themselves do not twinkle or waver, but rather burn as cold, steady pinpricks of ancient, distant fire against the velvet nothingness. The sheer depth of this blackness is impossible to simulate or truly comprehend until one is entirely immersed within it. It is a darkness so profound and absolute that it feels almost heavy, pressing against the thin polycarbonate bubble of the helmet. The mind, desperate for familiar visual cues, often struggles to process the complete absence of environmental depth and texture in the background. This silent, eternal night exists simultaneously alongside the brightest day, creating a beautiful yet fundamentally unsettling visual paradox. Thermal extremes immediately begin testing the spacesuit's automated heating and cooling defense systems. Stepping from the harsh, illuminated side of the orbital complex into its sprawling shadow plunges the local temperature by hundreds of degrees in a matter of seconds. The thick, multi-layered garments must instantly react to prevent the human body inside from either freezing solid or suffering fatal hypothermia. A complex network of woven tubes quietly circulates cold water across the astronaut's skin, absorbing the immense body heat generated by fighting the pressurized joints. When the orbit carries the station into the dark side of the planet, internal heaters embedded in the gloves and boots desperately fire up to stave off the creeping absolute cold. The sudden thermal shock of crossing the Terminator line causes the metal components of the suit and the station itself to audibly pop and groan. Surviving these brutal swings requires the wearable spacecraft to function as a flawless, miniature thermostat in a completely unforgiving environment. Any failure in this delicate balancing act would spell immediate disaster for the explorer trapped inside the heavy restrictive layers. It is a continuous, invisible battle against the wild, violently shifting thermodynamics of the bare cosmic void. A thin layer of pure gold on the visor acts as a perfect shield against raw solar radiation. This astonishingly thin film, only a few molecules thick, is entirely capable of reflecting the most dangerous ultraviolet and infrared rays before they can penetrate the helmet. While it appears highly reflective from the outside, the microscopic application allows the astronaut to easily see through the precious metal from within. Lowering this golden shield transforms the blinding, hostile glare of the sun into a manageable, soft green illumination. It is an incredibly elegant, low-tech solution to one of the most immediate and deadly hazards of operating in the naked environment of low Earth orbit. The brilliant mirror-like surface also has the striking effect of hiding the human face inside, turning the explorer into an anonymous, faceless representative of the entire species. When the visor is fully deployed, it reflects the entire sprawling panorama of the space station and the glowing curvature of the Earth below. This literal golden halo is not merely a piece of essential safety equipment, but a powerful visual symbol of human ingenuity braving the elements. It stands as a flawless, shimmering barrier between the fragile optic nerve and the raging nuclear furnace of our local star. Quietly, the steady hum of the massive backpack confirms the primary life support is functioning normally. This rhythmic, mechanical heartbeat is the most beautiful sound an astronaut can hear while dangling suspended in the absolute silence of the vacuum. The primary life support system, a heavy, blocky appendage strapped to the rear of the suit, is solely responsible for artificially sustaining every biological requirement. Inside this humming enclosure, fans frantically circulate pure oxygen, pushing it down over the face and pulling the dangerous exhaled carbon dioxide away to be scrubbed. Tiny, high-speed water pumps force the vital cooling fluid through the intricate web of undergarments, actively regulating the violent internal climate. This slight, continuous vibration against the spine serves as a constant, reassuring tactile reminder that the machine is actively fighting to keep its occupant alive. If that gentle vibration were to suddenly cease, the resulting silence would immediately trigger a terrifying high-stakes fight for survival. The astronaut's entire existence is entirely dependent on the flawless, uninterrupted operation of these spinning fans and whirring pumps. This mechanical companion breathes for them, cools them, and ultimately shields their fragile biology from the total hostility of the abyss. Looking back, the brilliant blue curve of Earth beautifully frames the metallic edge of the doorway. The sheer scale of the home planet is staggering, filling the bottom half of the infinite black canvas with a swirling, vivid marble of oceans and clouds. It is a breathtaking, vibrant jewel that stands in profound, almost shocking contrast to the sterile, deadly grey structures of the orbital outpost. Framed perfectly by the sharp shadows of the airlock, this majestic view serves as the ultimate sensory anchor in an ocean of terrifying infinity. It is a deeply emotional, humbling sight that instantly justifies the immense physical danger and mechanical complexity of the spacewalk. This glowing cradle of life remains silently below, quietly watching as its children learn to step awkwardly into the cosmic dark. To safely navigate that awkward step into the cosmic dark, the fragile human form must be entirely encased within a masterwork of modern engineering. This intricate structure, officially designated as the Extravehicular Mobility Unit, functions entirely as a personal, human-shaped spacecraft rather than a simple piece of heavy clothing. It possesses its own dedicated avionics, complex communication arrays, and active thermal control systems, operating entirely independently of the larger orbital station. Moving inside this rigid, highly pressurized vessel requires an immense amount of physical exertion, as the fabric naturally wants to splay outward into a stiff, immovable starfish shape. Every single joint is a complex, heavy mechanical assembly of metallic bearings and airtight environmental seals designed to grant only a small fraction of normal human mobility. To bend an arm or simply twist a shoulder is to actively fight against the hard vacuum of space, forcefully pushing against the internal artificial atmosphere. As you lie comfortably exactly where you are, feeling the gentle, constant pull of earthly gravity against your resting limbs, consider the sheer, exhausting effort of simply closing a hand. In the harsh reality of orbit, this wearable spacecraft fiercely dictates every single physical motion, demanding deliberate forethought and heavy muscular exertion for the smallest shift in posture. It is a brilliant, heavy mechanical armour forged specifically to conquer the unforgiving, lethal environment of the final frontier. Deep beneath the bulky exterior layers of protective fabric, a specialised undergarment rests directly against the skin to carefully manage the incredible physical toll of this labour. Woven intricately through this form-fitting spandex are hundreds of tiny, highly flexible tubes designed to silently circulate chilled water across the astronaut's body. Without this active, constant thermal management, the intense physical exertion of fighting the pressurized suit would quickly cause the occupant to overheat to dangerously fatal levels. This liquid cooling and ventilation garment resembles a complex artificial circulatory system, wrapping tightly around the torso, arms and legs of the spacewalker. As the astronaut works tirelessly in the void, the icy water actively absorbs excess metabolic heat and carries it rapidly away to a specialized sublimator housed deep within the rear assembly. There, the accumulated heat is continuously and violently rejected directly into the frigid vacuum of space, turning a solid block of ice directly into dissipating vapor. The sensation of this chilled, wet web pressing firmly against the skin provides a constant, refreshing sensory contrast to the grueling physical labor required by the mission. It is a vital, invisible river of coolant that keeps the internal environment perfectly balanced, regardless of the raging solar extremes shifting wildly just inches away. This hidden, skin-tight layer remains the unsung essential hero of the extravehicular experience, quietly preserving human endurance in a fundamentally impossible setting. Resting peacefully in your current environment, your breaths are likely slow and steady, your jaw entirely relaxed as the ambient room pressure remains comfortably constant. High above the atmosphere, nestled securely inside the rigid polycarbonate helmet, astronauts face a completely different reality whenever the suit's internal pressure dynamically shifts. A small, unassuming block of soft polyurethane foam is strategically mounted inside the lower helmet ring to allow them to manually clear their sensitive ears during these changes. Because the thick, heavily pressurized gloves cannot possibly reach their face through the glass, this simple physical device is absolutely critical for equalizing inner ear pressure. By pressing their nose firmly against the textured foam, the crew can successfully perform the Valsalva maneuver, forcing trapped air into the eustachian tubes to prevent agonizing barotrauma. It is a brilliantly simple, purely mechanical solution to an inescapable, deeply biological problem occurring inside a highly advanced multi-billion-dollar technological marvel. This small, unobtrusive block of foam also serves a secondary, equally vital psychological purpose during the long, grueling hours spent working outside the safety of the station. If an intense itch develops on a nose or cheek, the rough surface of the foam provides the only possible means of scratching it until the mission ends. It is a deeply humbling reminder that even when surrounded by the absolute pinnacle of human aerospace technology, basic earthly discomforts must still be cleverly and practically managed. Surrounding this delicate, breathable internal environment is a heavily layered shield explicitly designed to withstand catastrophic hypervelocity impacts from the invisible hazards of low Earth orbit. Layers of tightly woven Kevlar and aluminized mylar form an impenetrable, rugged barrier against the microscopic orbital debris that constantly and silently rains down upon the structure. These tiny flecks of shattered rock and man-made shrapnel travel at incomprehensible speeds that would effortlessly tear through solid steel, making conventional protective fabrics completely useless. The outer protective shell is meticulously constructed from orthofabric, a robust, highly specialized blend of materials that offers ultimate resistance to violent tearing and extreme temperatures. Beneath this rugged white exterior lie multiple alternating layers of reinforced thermal insulation, acting as a sacrificial bumper to shatter incoming micrometeoroids long before they can penetrate the vital pressure bladder. Each individual layer is separated by a microscopic vacuum gap, dramatically increasing both the thermal isolation and the kinetic stopping power of the bulky outer garment. This wearable, flexible fortress is the direct result of decades of rigorous destructive testing, constantly evolving to meet the ever-changing lethal threats of the immediate orbital environment. It is an absolute masterclass in modern material science, turning soft, flexible textiles into a reliable, unyielding armour capable of stopping projectiles fired at mathematically impossible velocities. The structural integrity of these carefully woven layers stands directly and squarely between the fragile human occupant and the terrifying reality of explosive orbital decompression. Perhaps the most incredibly critical and mechanically complex components of this entire wearable spacecraft are the intricate assemblies covering the astronauts' working hands. Custom-molded, highly engineered gloves strictly ensure that human fingers can still bend, grasp, and manipulate small tools against the stiff, heavily pressurized fabric of the suit. Each individual glove is meticulously sized and laser-fitted to the exact unique dimensions of the specific crew member's hand, strictly minimizing the internal dead space where expanding air can severely restrict movement. The outer fingertips are carefully capped with specialized textured silicone pads explicitly designed to provide a faint, critical semblance of tactile feedback through the thick protective layers. A complex hidden system of internal miniature pulleys and rigid restraint cables violently prevents the glove from ballooning outward, securely anchoring the flexible joint assemblies directly to the metal wrist ring. Even with these massive technological advancements, performing complex mechanical work outside in the vacuum has been accurately compared to trying to repair a delicate watch while wearing thick, rigid winter mittens. As you let your own hands rest heavily and naturally at your sides, take a brief moment to truly appreciate the completely effortless articulation of your resting fingers. In the harsh, unforgiving reality of low Earth orbit, merely gripping a simple metal handrail requires actively fighting the pressurized suit's constant, exhausting desire to aggressively spread the fingers wide open. The sheer, compounding muscular fatigue experienced deeply within the forearms and hands is very often the primary, unavoidable limiting factor for exactly how long an extravehicular mission can safely last. Serving as the unbreakable structural foundation for this entire wearable spacecraft is a highly rigid central shell that securely anchors all of the flexible, pressurized appendages. The hard upper torso acts directly as a solid, unyielding fiberglass chassis, securely connecting all the vital electrical, structural, and breathable air systems in one incredibly dense central hub. It functions as the primary mechanical manifold where the glass helmet, the flexible arms, the fabric lower torso, and the dense life support machinery all seamlessly and securely lock together into a single airtight unit. Hidden deeply inside this tough vest-like structure, a complex, tightly woven network of internal plumbing, routing chilled water, and breathable oxygen connects seamlessly to the exterior life support machinery. The solid, unmoving chess piece also securely houses the primary display and control module, a highly critical interface panel mounted directly yet awkwardly in the astronaut's downward field of view. Because they cannot possibly physically bend their neck to look down over the bulky, protruding chest, they must masterfully use a small wrist mirror to read the inverted digital displays and operate the crucial analog switches. This incredibly tough fiberglass core safely provides the absolute necessary rigidity to support the immensely heavy rear components, while completely eliminating the terrifying risk of catastrophic fabric tearing at the primary central seams. It effectively and permanently transforms the soft, highly vulnerable human torso into a durable, integrated mechanical component of the massive orbital infrastructure. This central solid hub remains the literal beating heart of the extravehicular mobility unit, flawlessly tying the disparate, highly complex survival systems into one cohesive, perfectly sealed whole. Hidden deeply within the dense machinery of the primary rear unit is an absolutely vital chemical defense system actively guarding against a quiet, deadly internal threat. Specialized, easily replaceable canisters containing highly reactive lithium hydroxide silently and continuously scrub dangerous carbon dioxide from every single exhaled breath trapped within the sealed environment. Without this active, constant chemical filtration, the entirely natural byproduct of basic human respiration would rapidly and fatally accumulate, leading swiftly to mental confusion, deep unconsciousness, and eventually unavoidable death. As the internal, high-speed fan continuously and forcefully circulates the suit's artificial atmosphere, the contaminated, exhaled air is aggressively forced directly through these porous, highly reactive chemical beds. The lithium hydroxide violently and immediately binds with the deadly carbon dioxide molecules, trapping them permanently in a rapid chemical reaction that simultaneously and noticeably generates a small amount of residual heat and water. It is a completely passive, mathematically infallible chemical process that operates flawlessly without the absolute need for complex moving mechanical parts or vulnerable electrical power. Allow your own steady breathing to deepen just slightly, quietly noticing how effortlessly the surrounding open room instantly absorbs and dissipates your warmly exhaled air. For the isolated orbital explorer, every single breath drawn must be meticulously processed, chemically scrubbed, and perfectly purified before it can be safely consumed again by the desperate lungs. This silent, hidden chemical sentinel works tirelessly and flawlessly in the background, carefully ensuring the invisible, natural poison of our own biology does not accidentally become a fatal, mission-ending flaw. Carrying the massive, unyielding burden of survival requires an immense, highly organised storage facility firmly and permanently attached to the rear of the rigid fiberglass torso. A massive, boxy pack, formerly known by engineers as the primary life support subsystem, firmly holds enough pressurized oxygen and battery power to completely sustain a human in the void for up to 8 continuous hours. This towering heavy mechanical appendage securely houses the main oxygen tanks, the dense silver zinc batteries, the vital cooling water reservoir, and the highly intricate sublimator that aggressively regulates internal temperature. Despite weighing well over 150 pounds back on Earth, this incredibly bulky apparatus becomes perfectly, effortlessly weightless in the continuous microgravity of low Earth orbit. However, it still absolutely retains its full, tremendous physical mass, vastly and dangerously altering the astronaut's centre of gravity and requiring extreme calculated care when rapidly rotating or stopping. The incredibly dense, labyrinthine packaging of vital valves, sensitive pressure regulators, and highly redundant electrical pathways represents the absolute pinnacle of miniaturized, life-saving aerospace engineering. This highly complex, self-contained mechanical ecosystem is the singular, absolute reason fragile human beings can successfully stray so far from the vital umbilical connections of the mother station. It completely and instantly transforms the vulnerable explorer into an autonomous, untethered human satellite fully capable of performing highly complex orbital surgery on the most advanced machinery ever built. Every single ounce of electrical power and every precious breath of air drawn during a grueling mission originates entirely from this heavily shielded, densely packed metallic vault. Even with multiple, highly redundant safety systems continuously running in parallel, the harsh, unforgiving reality of the deep cosmos demands a final, absolutely desperate failsafe. An emergency oxygen purge valve sits constantly ready to provide a highly critical, immensely loud 30-minute lifeline if the primary life support systems suddenly suffer a catastrophic, unrecoverable failure. Mounted securely and prominently on the front chest unit, this mechanical red lever is specifically designed to completely bypass the complex scrubber networks and instantly flood the helmet directly with pure high-pressure oxygen. Activating this extreme valve instantly initiates a highly wasteful open-loop system where fresh breathing gas is rapidly forced over the face and immediately vented violently out into the silent vacuum of space. It is a highly inefficient, violently loud mechanical process that quickly and ruthlessly bleeds away the suit's finite, precious secondary oxygen reserves merely to buy a few, highly critical minutes of survival. This drastic, terrifying measure serves simultaneously to aggressively flush out toxic carbon dioxide buildup and to fiercely combat sudden, blinding visor fogging caused by catastrophic thermal system failures. Knowing this vital emergency lever is instantly and easily accessible provides a massive, deeply necessary psychological safety net when operating daily in such an inherently deadly, unpredictable environment. It is the absolute last, desperate line of defense, a purely mechanical panic button designed specifically to facilitate a rapid, highly frantic retreat back to the immediate safety of the station's interior. The constant, visible presence of the purge valve is a stark, sobering reminder that the acceptable margin for error in the deep void is fundamentally and permanently zero. Sinking even deeper into your calm, physically relaxed state, it is incredibly easy to take the completely passive, absolutely effortless nature of earthly survival for completely granted. High above the protective atmosphere, the basic reality of existence is entirely and violently reversed, constantly requiring massive active technological intervention just to safely draw the very next breath. Ultimately, absolute biological survival depends entirely and completely on the flawless, highly synchronized operation of this incredibly complex, rigidly pressurized wearable cocoon. From the microscopic, tightly woven protective threads of the outer micrometeoroid shield to the heavy, constantly spinning metal fans of the primary life support systems, thousands of components must flawlessly execute their specific functions without a single, minor error. A microscopic, invisible failure in the smallest rubber O-ring, or a sudden, unexpected electrical short in a minor relay could easily and rapidly cascade into an unrecoverable, fatal orbital disaster. The isolated astronaut is intimately and constantly aware that their life is entirely reliant on the absolute perfection of the dedicated engineers who meticulously assemble their tailored armour back on the ground. This profound, inescapable mechanical dependency creates a highly unique, deeply intimate relationship between the fragile explorer and the complex humming machine they currently inhabit. The pressurized suit is absolutely not merely safety equipment. It is a literal surrogate atmosphere, a completely personal wearable planet constructed entirely of woven fiberglass, forged steel, and synthetic fabric. To step outward into the infinite, terrifying abyss is to place complete, unyielding human faith in the ultimate triumph of brilliant engineering over the absolute, uncompromising hostility of the wider universe. To step outward into the infinite, terrifying abyss is to place complete, unyielding human faith in the ultimate triumph of brilliant engineering over the absolute, uncompromising hostility of the wider universe. Suspended securely within this technological marvel, the astronaut is finally free to look away from the immediate metallic hostility of the station and gaze downward at the astonishing panorama rotating beneath their heavy boots. Far below, filling the entire lower hemisphere of their vision, the vivid, highly saturated blue oceans drift silently past in a mesmerizing display of planetary scale. This endless expanse of deep, liquid sapphire reflects the brilliant solar rays, entirely dominating the visual field and offering a deeply soothing counterpoint to the harsh, sterile greys of the surrounding machinery. Because the orbital complex is continuously plummeting around the curvature of the globe, this colossal seascape appears to be moving at a staggering speed of nearly 5 miles every single second. Yet, despite this incomprehensible velocity, the extreme distance provides a smooth, completely silent illusion of slow, majestic progression across the reinforced visor. The massive white swirls of global weather systems glide gracefully over the vast waters, completely masking the violent, chaotic energy of the terrestrial winds churning miles below. Because of this incredible orbital velocity, the traditional human concept of a 24-hour day is violently and completely shattered into tiny fractured segments. A breathtaking, violently colourful sunrise or sunset forcefully occurs every 45 minutes, locking the astronaut into a rapid, endless cycle of blinding light and absolute darkness. The relentless speed of the orbit means the sun does not slowly dip below the horizon, but rather dramatically drops behind the planet in a matter of seconds. When the station suddenly crosses the terminator line into day, the edge of the atmosphere ignites with a brilliant, blinding flash of pure rainbow colours compressed into a single, overwhelming moment. Distinct layers of deep red, bright orange and vivid blue rapidly stack upon each other, slicing through the darkness just before the raw star emerges. This sudden, explosive dawn instantly bakes the outer fabric of the spacesuit, flooding the helmet with blinding radiance that forces the heavy gold visor to be immediately lowered. Conversely, the orbital twilight is equally dramatic, as the sun vanishes and the vibrant colours quickly flatten and dissolve directly into the thick ink of the void. The swift transition from blistering solar heat to freezing cosmic night happens without any twilight warning, plunging the floating worker back into a deeply unsettling abyss. These rapid, metronomic cycles of light and shadow dictate every single procedure and timeline during the grueling extravehicular mission, forcing humanity to operate strictly on a dizzying orbital rhythm. Drifting steadily toward the higher, frigid latitudes of the globe, entirely new, spectral phenomena begin to manifest across the dark curvature of the Earth. Dancing wildly across the polar regions, immense auroras appear as massive, glowing curtains of vibrant green and crimson-red light, towering hundreds of miles into the vacuum. These stunning light shows are the visible, violent collisions of highly charged solar particles crashing furiously into the upper edges of the planet's protective magnetic field. Unlike observing the northern lights from the snowy ground, the orbital perspective looks directly down into the very heart of the glowing ethereal storms. The neon ribbons twist, fold, and silently ripple like ghostly silk waving in an invisible cosmic wind, illuminating the dark ocean below with a faint, eerie glow. Occasionally, the trajectory of the massive orbital outpost actually carries it straight through the upper, wispy edges of these luminescent clouds, immersing the spacewalker directly in the planetary radiation shield. As you sink comfortably deeper into your soft mattress, feeling the steady, reliable rhythm of your own pulse, gently consider the utterly silent, beautiful chaos of those magnetic storms unfolding high above the polar ice. To be suspended outside in the cold void, watching these towering towers of green fire silently guard the poles, is an experience that defies all earthly logic. It transforms the silent night pass from a period of frightening isolation into a front row seat to the most spectacular silent light show in the solar system. During the prolonged quiet solitude of an orbital night pass, the face of the planet transforms from a canvas of nature into a glowing, undeniable testament to human presence. Without the blinding glare of the sun to wash out the surface, golden webs of artificial city lights perfectly map the sprawling, aggressive reach of human civilization. These dense clusters of warm yellow illumination cluster heavily along the darkened coastlines and major river valleys, accurately sketching the geographical history of global settlement. Connecting these massive, brightly burning metropolitan hubs are impossibly long, delicate threads of light representing the vast, intricate networks of international highways and transit corridors. From this godlike vantage point, the intense collective energy grid of the human species looks remarkably like the complex, firing neural pathways of a single, massive, glowing brain. The sheer scale of the electricity required to paint these continents with such visible golden intensity is deeply staggering when viewed against the absolute blackness of the surrounding cosmic void. Certain anomalies easily catch the trained eye, such as the brilliant blue-white glare of fishing fleets fiercely illuminating the dark waters of the Pacific, or the bright, isolated flares of distant oil rigs. These artificial stars on the ground provide a strange, deeply comforting sense of distant companionship to the isolated explorer floating silently hundreds of miles above. Looking down at the sleeping, glowing world, one can easily imagine the billions of unaware lives continuously playing out beneath that sprawling golden canopy of electric light. Deep within the thick, swirling cloud decks that obscure the lower atmosphere, powerful natural forces quietly rage entirely unnoticed by the silent observer above. From orbit, massive, violent thunderstorms look remarkably different from the terrifying, deafening tempests experienced by those trapped beneath them on the ground. The fierce lightning strikes are totally muffled by the vacuum, appearing only as tiny, flickering camera flashes buried deeply within the thick white cotton of the storm clouds. It is a deeply surreal experience to witness the raw, destructive power of nature playing out in absolute perfect silence across the darkened hemisphere. The flashing storms slowly drift across the oceans and continents, entirely indifferent to the political borders or fragile human infrastructure they inevitably wash over. This silent, flickering energy serves as a beautiful, constant reminder that the home planet is an active, breathing entity, constantly churning and redistributing its vast thermal energy. Glancing delicately toward the extreme curved edge of the visible horizon, a startlingly fragile optical phenomenon outlines the absolute limits of planetary survival. A delicate, beautifully glowing blue halo perfectly traces the outer curve of the atmosphere, sharply dividing the sunlit Earth from the deep, unforgiving blackness of deep space. This faint, luminous ribbon is formed entirely by the scattering of high-altitude sunlight, proudly displaying the precise, microscopic layer of gases that sustain all known biology. Seeing this thin membrane from the outside violently reveals how incredibly, terrifyingly thin our breathable air really is when compared to the massive solid bulk of the rock below. If the Earth were shrunk to the exact size of a standard apple, this vital protective atmosphere would be proportionally thinner than the waxy skin coating the fruit. This stunning visual fact instantly shatters the deeply ingrained terrestrial illusion of an endless, boundless sky that stretches forever upward into the heavens. Draw a slow, deep breath in your quiet room, feeling the air fill your lungs completely, and gently acknowledge that this very same air forms that impossibly thin, glowing shield keeping all earthly life secure. Recognizing the sheer fragility of that tiny blue band is a deeply sobering moment that permanently shifts the spacewalker's fundamental understanding of environmental vulnerability. It is the only physical barrier preventing the warm, wet, chaotic miracle of planetary life from being instantly flash-frozen and sterilized by brutal cosmic radiation. Remarkably, as the massive, familiar landmasses glide smoothly into the astronaut's field of view, the structural reality of the planet boldly contradicts the maps we are taught from childhood. Continents and countries sweep past with absolutely no visible borders, completely erasing the rigid, artificial political divisions that heavily dictate the affairs of the world below. The sprawling geography is defined exclusively by natural sweeping features like massive mountain ranges, deep winding river basins, and the sweeping golden arcs of vast dry deserts. The rugged snow-capped spine of the Himalayas bleeds seamlessly into the dry arid plateaus of Central Asia, without a single line to mark where one nation ends and a rival begins. Massive dark green rainforests stretch unbroken across South America, completely ignorant of the invisible jurisdictions fiercely guarded by the humans living deep beneath the canopy. This stark, undeniable visual unity forcefully reminds the isolated observer that the planet operates entirely as a single, highly integrated ecological system. Observing this borderless globe fundamentally alters the psychological framework of the explorer, stripping away deeply ingrained nationalistic biases and replacing them with a stark planetary perspective. The bitter conflicts and territorial disputes that dominate global news seem impossibly small, petty, and entirely irrelevant when viewing the singular unified marble floating alone in the dark. It is a peaceful, powerfully humbling geography that fiercely advocates for the shared collective destiny of every single organism trapped entirely upon its surface. Piercing through the remarkably clear cloudless skies over the warmer equatorial regions, the vibrant topography of the ocean floor suddenly becomes astonishingly visible from hundreds of miles away. Shallow coral reefs and sprawling sandy shoals shine with a shocking iridescent turquoise clarity that cuts sharply against the deep, heavy indigo of the open, unfathomable sea. These massive biological structures trace the hidden, underwater continental shelves with breathtaking, vivid artistic precision, painting abstract masterpieces across the liquid canvas. The Great Barrier Reef, stretching for thousands of miles along the Australian coast, is easily identifiable as a brilliant glowing vein of vibrant life glowing right through the blue water. The stark colour contrast highlights the shallow, sun-drenched waters where marine life fiercely thrives, visibly separating them from the cold, nutrient-rich abysses of the deeper ocean trenches. The intricate, swirling patterns created by ocean currents violently dragging lighter sand over dark rock are perfectly preserved and displayed for the floating observer. This incredible visual clarity allows an astronaut to fully appreciate the complex hidden depths of the massive aquatic engine that aggressively drives the global climate. The vivid, striking colours of the shallow seas provide a desperately needed visual feast, a burst of tropical warmth cutting through the freezing, sterile environment of the immediate spacewalk. It is a stunning living mosaic that beautifully highlights the immense hidden biological wealth thriving just beneath the reflective, mirrored surface of the global ocean. Occasionally, a remarkably rare, precise celestial alignment dramatically and aggressively alters the familiar sunlit face of the rotating planet passing silently below. During a total solar eclipse, an astronaut peering down toward the surface will witness the moon's massive, ominously black shadow racing wildly across the clouds and open oceans. It appears as a deep, distinct, heavily bruised stain of absolute darkness moving at thousands of miles per hour, aggressively swallowing daylight as it streaks across the globe. Unlike observing an eclipse from the ground, where the sky simply dims, the orbital perspective reveals the precise, localized nature of this cosmic intersection. The massive, circular shadow forcefully carves a path of temporary night through the surrounding daylight, creating a surreal, moving void that actively chases the rotation of the Earth. It is a breathtaking, slightly terrifying demonstration of the precise, clockwork mechanics of the solar system playing out actively on an immense planetary scale. Let your eyelids grow slightly heavier, resting in the quiet, comforting shadow of your own room, perfectly safe from the immense racing darkness cast by the massive moving spheres above. Watching this colossal black disk silently hunt across the continents provides a profound, visceral understanding of the vast distances and massive objects constantly orbiting in the dark. It instantly reduces the entire massive Earth to a simple spherical projection screen, passively receiving the sweeping shadows cast by its own solitary silent moon. Ultimately, silently witnessing this complete, overwhelming panorama of borderless continents, glowing auroras, and fragile blue atmospheres is an impossibly heavy burden for a single human mind. The sheer scale of the visual input, combined with the visceral looming threat of the deadly vacuum, consistently overloads the traditional psychological frameworks used to process earthly reality. This staggering sensory cocktail frequently triggers a profound, entirely permanent cognitive shift, known formally by aerospace psychologists and philosophers as the overview effect. In a single, overwhelming moment of utter clarity, the spacewalker realizes with sudden, staggering certainty that the Earth is a single, incredibly fragile living spaceship actively flying through a hostile void. The artificial separation between self and planet instantly dissolves, replaced by a fierce, protective tenderness for the tiny blue marble that harbours everything they have ever loved. All human history, every brilliant triumph and devastating tragedy, is suddenly recognised as occurring entirely within that impossibly thin, glowing membrane of fragile air. Returning to the cramped mechanical confines of the airlock, the explorer is permanently changed, their terrestrial perspective forever shattered by the undeniable reality of the cosmos. They are burdened with a new, profound understanding of planetary unity, an absolute truth that is notoriously difficult to fully articulate to those who have never left the surface. To hang weightlessly over the world and truly see it in its terrifying, beautiful entirety is the ultimate transformative reward for braving the uncompromising hostility of the dark. Facing the uncompromising hostility of the dark requires more than just mechanical fortitude. It demands a total surrender to a new set of physical rules. Within this weightless realm, every physical action requires an equal and opposite reaction, turning what would be simple movements on Earth into complex, careful calculations. If an astronaut were to push a heavy toolbox away with too much force, the box would push back with identical energy, sending the explorer tumbling backward into the void. This fundamental law of motion dictates a strange, non-intuitive dance, where every nudge and pull must be perfectly accounted for to maintain a stable position. A simple reach for a camera or a twist of the shoulders generates unintended momentum that must be actively countered by the suit's anchors to prevent a slow-motion spin. This constant mental accounting for every action transforms the spacewalk into a deep, meditative exercise in physical causality. Surprisingly, the universe does not provide a baseline for up or down, meaning the smallest interaction has consequences that echo through the entire frame of the station. Navigating this environment requires a profound, tactile understanding of how forces propagate through a body that has no weight to ground it. It is a world where a single, misplaced flick of a wrist can alter one's entire trajectory, necessitating a slow, deliberate rhythm of movement. Releasing a wrench or a screwdriver during an intricate repair does not cause the tool to fall away toward the planet, but rather to float motionless right beside your hand. Without the downward pull of atmospheric gravity to accelerate the object, it simply continues its orbital trajectory in perfect synchronization with the station and the human observer. It remains suspended in the velvet silence, a small metallic satellite sharing the same 5 mph velocity as the extravehicular worker. This lack of falling creates a surreal work environment where the entire concept of a workbench is redefined by the surrounding empty space. One can simply park a multi-million-dollar scientific instrument in mid-air, letting it hover like a ghost while reaching for a different fastener or electrical connector. It is a hauntingly beautiful sight to see a cluster of tools hanging in the void, seemingly untethered by anything but the invisible threads of orbital mechanics. If we were to look closer at these hovering objects, they seem to possess a magical stillness that is entirely impossible to replicate within an atmosphere. The tool stays exactly where it is placed, shimmering under the raw sunlight as it waits for the gloved hand to retrieve it once more. This physical grace provides a rare moment of convenience in an otherwise brutal environment, allowing the explorer to manage complex tasks in 3 dimensions. Progress along the vast exterior of the station is achieved not by walking, but by gently crawling hand over hand along the hundreds of golden handrails. These strategically placed bars serve as the primary pathways for navigating the metallic landscape, requiring constant upper body strength to maneuver the massive bulk of the pressurized suit. One never walks in the traditional sense, as the legs are mostly used as stabilizers or tucked away to avoid snagging on delicate external sensors. The sensation of pulling oneself along these rails is remarkably similar to swimming through a thick invisible medium that offers no resistance until the moment of contact. Each grip is a vital, conscious connection to the solid reality of the station, preventing the void from claiming the wanderer as they traverse the modules. The golden coating on these rails isn't for aesthetics. It provides the necessary thermal and electrical properties to endure the harsh solar environment while guiding the crew. This structure of rails creates a network of safe passage that wraps around the entire orbital complex like a specialized climbing wall. Moving between workstations requires a slow, rhythmic transfer of weight, feeling the slight vibration of the station through the thick silicon palms of the gloves. It is a methodical, tactile journey that forces the mind to focus entirely on the next 10 inches of cold, metallic reality. While we drift in this state, the brain eventually stops searching for the cues of motion, accepting the stillness of the cabin as a new baseline. This permanent state of falling creates a paradoxical sense of being completely stationary while travelling at speeds that would cross an entire continent in mere minutes. The inner ear, deprived of the downward pull of gravity on its tiny vestibular crystals, eventually stops trying to signal a vertical direction to the mind. Surprisingly, the universe retains its demand for effort, because even without the presence of weight, large objects retain all their inherent mass. This principle of inertia means that a massive replacement battery, though it may hover weightlessly, still possesses the momentum of a several hundred-pound object. An astronaut must exert significant physical force to accelerate the mass, and even more effort to bring it back to a controlled, precise halt. If we were to look closer, the danger lies in the deceptive ease of starting a movement compared to the difficulty of finishing it. A floating object can easily become a slow-motion battering ram if it is not handled with extreme calculated patience and constant vigilance. Navigating these heavy components requires a deep, tactile understanding of physics that replaces the earthly intuition of weight with a cosmic intuition of momentum. The physical exertion of moving mass in a vacuum can be incredibly taxing on the muscles, as every stop and start must be powered by the human body. One must brace their feet firmly in specialized restraints before attempting to shift a heavy module to avoid being flung away by the reaction. It is a constant battle against the stubbornness of matter, proving that even in the void, the rules of mass are never truly suspended. Human bodies naturally and instinctively curl into a relaxed semi-fetal posture when gravity stops pulling the limbs toward the center of the Earth. Known formally as the neutral body position, this is the most comfortable and effortless state for the musculoskeletal system to inhabit when all external forces are removed. The arms drift slightly upward and inward, the knees bend gently, and the head tilts forward into a peaceful, non-stressed alignment. As you rest in your bed, perhaps feeling your own limbs sink into the mattress, imagine your body surrendering to this cosmic default. Every muscle that usually works to keep you upright or balanced simply lets go, allowing the skeleton to find its own natural equilibrium in the dark. This posture is so pervasive that engineers must design the interior of the spacesuit to accommodate this specific curvature, ensuring the human and the machine work in perfect harmony. This structure of the body reflects a deep biological return to a state of being that precedes our time on the planetary surface. Floating in the suit, the astronaut feels no pressure points on their back or legs, as the weight of the body is distributed perfectly across the internal atmosphere. It is the ultimate form of physical relaxation, where the skeleton is finally freed from the crushing, lifelong burden of its own weight. Surprisingly, the universe behaves strangely even at the molecular level, as sweat refuses to drip off the brow and instead pools into thick, sticky layers. Without the downward pull of gravity to encourage a droplet to fall, surface tension causes the moisture to cling stubbornly to the face, scalp, and eyes. This can become a significant hazard, as the salt-heavy liquid can migrate into the eyes or nose, where it remains trapped as an irritating film. Because an astronaut cannot reach inside their pressurized helmet to wipe their face, they must rely on the movement of their head to shift the liquid. The sensation is often described as feeling like a thick, warm jelly is slowly spreading across the skin, a strange byproduct of a body working hard. It is a visceral, liquid reminder of the biological struggle occurring inside the pristine white walls of the extravehicular suit, reminding the worker of their own humanity. While you breathe slowly in the dry, comfortable air of your home, think of the astronaut managing this strange, liquid environment with every heartbeat. The suit's ventilation system works tirelessly to draw this moisture away into a specialized absorption pad, but the process is slow and often incomplete. It is a quiet, sticky reality of life in the vacuum, where even the most basic bodily functions become a test of engineering and patience. Fluid shifts upward toward the head almost immediately upon entering microgravity, significantly altering facial structures and sometimes dulling the sense of taste. Without gravity to pull the blood and interstitial fluids toward the lower extremities, the face becomes slightly puffy as the body redistributes its internal volume. This congestion in the sinuses creates a sensation similar to a constant head cold, making even the most basic physical tasks feel more pressurized. This internal migration of liquid is a constant, subtle pressure that reminds the explorer of their physical displacement from their home world. The heart, no longer required to pump blood uphill against the weight of the body, initially works too hard until the system adapts to the new environment. It is a deep, systemic transformation that touches every cell, proving that the human form is a creature designed specifically for the heavy embrace of a planet. Interestingly, this shift also affects the way the brain processes sensory input, leading to a temporary loss of appetite or a change in aromatic perception. The tongue and nose find familiar flavors muted, forcing the crew to seek out stronger, spicier seasonings to compensate for the internal pressure. It is a subtle, persistent reminder that the body is in a state of constant adaptation, struggling to find its rhythm in the absence of a gravitational anchor. Spatial orientation relies completely and exclusively on vision, as the inner ear can no longer determine which way is down in the absence of gravity. This means that an astronaut can be working upside down relative to the station and feel completely upright as long as their eyes can see a stable reference. The brain quickly learns to treat whatever surface the feet are pointing toward as the floor, regardless of where the Earth happens to be. This flexible sense of space allows for incredible maneuverability, but it can also lead to sudden, disorienting flashes of vertigo if one looks into the void too quickly. The mind must constantly manufacture its own sense of up and down to remain functional, creating a subjective reality that is entirely independent of the cosmos. It is a masterful trick of cognitive adaptation, allowing the human consciousness to navigate a world that has no inherent top or bottom. If we were to look closer at the astronaut's eyes, we would see them darting between handrails and modules, desperately seeking the geometric lines of the station. Without these visual anchors, the sense of self can begin to dissolve into the surrounding emptiness, leading to a loss of physical control. This reliance on the eyes reinforces the visual dominance of the spacewalk, where seeing is the only way of knowing one's place in the infinite. Relaxing completely allows an astronaut to simply hover, entirely disconnected from any solid surface in a state of pure, weightless suspension. This is the ultimate expression of the physics of floating, where the body becomes a tiny, independent satellite existing in perfect equilibrium with its immediate environment. For a few brief moments, the struggle of the spacewalk fades away, leaving only the profound, silent sensation of being a part of the orbital flow. Ultimately, this moment of hovering is the reward for the long hours of training and the immense stress of the mission. To be still in the center of the void, with the Earth turning below and the stars burning above, is to experience a freedom that is nearly impossible to describe. It is the final, quiet realization that the physics of floating is not just a set of rules, but a new way of existing within the heart of the universe. To be still in the center of the void, with the Earth turning below and the stars burning above, is to experience a freedom that is nearly impossible to describe. This new way of existing within the heart of the universe requires specialized instruments designed to bridge the gap between human dexterity and the rigid constraints of a pressurized environment. Specially designed pistol grip tools appear remarkably oversized, featuring exaggerated triggers and bulky handles specifically engineered to easily accommodate the thick, semi-rigid fingers of the pressurized gloves. These complex mechanical devices are not merely drills, but highly precise computer-controlled torque drivers that allow an astronaut to carefully program the exact force required for every single bolt. Without this automated precision, the equal and opposite reaction of a manual turn would simply spin the worker in the opposite direction, turning a simple task into a dangerous tumble. Inside the tool's rugged casing, advanced sensors and feedback motors provide a tactile pulse that can be felt through the many layers of the suit, communicating the status of the repair without the need for an external display. The high-contrast white finish on the tool body makes it easily visible against the deep black of the void, ensuring that even if a shadow falls across the workspace, the instrument remains a distinct, manageable object. Each trigger pull is metered and steady, delivering a calibrated pulse of power that feels like a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat transferred through the heavy palm of the glove. This mechanical synergy allows a human to perform delicate orbital surgery on the station's massive exterior, slowly coaxing life back into the modules one fastener at a time. It is a slow, methodical interaction where the hum of the motor becomes a comforting artificial resonance in a world that offers no other sound. Deep within this vast, light-drenched theatre, a secondary layer of protection ensures that the freedom of movement never results in a permanent departure from the station. Steel tethers are considered the absolute minimum requirement for any extravehicular activity. acting as the primary physical anchor that prevents an astronaut from drifting away into the endless cosmic ocean. These thin, high-strength cables are wound tightly on spring-loaded reels attached to the suit's waist, constantly adjusting their length to provide enough slack for work while remaining ready to arrest any sudden movement. The precise slow-motion locking of a tether hook into a golden handrail provides a sharp metallic click that travels through the suit as a reassuring vibration of safety. While you remain perfectly still in the safety of your home, notice how the simple knowledge of a solid boundary provides a subconscious sense of peace. In the high-altitude vacuum, that boundary is reduced to a single strand of woven metal that represents the difference between a successful mission and a lonely, silent voyage into the dark. Every time a worker moves to a new location, they must engage in a careful, repetitive dance of leapfrogging their two safety hooks to ensure they are never disconnected from the hull. This continuous connection forms a psychological umbilical cord, a tangible reminder that even while floating over the curve of the Earth, the Voyager remains a part of the human world. The tether is not just a safety device but a bridge of trust, allowing the mind to focus on the intricate tasks at hand without the looming fear of the abyss. Progressing further into the workflow, the transition from free-floating movement to high-precision work requires a specialized mechanical foundation known as an adjustable foot restraint. These robust platforms lock securely into standardized sockets located at various workstations across the station's exterior, effectively turning the astronaut into a fixed, upright extension of the station itself. By sliding the heavy, rigid boots into the padded stirrups and twisting to engage the locking mechanism, the crew can free both hands for the most intricate and physically demanding repair tasks. This stable base allows the legs to take over the burden of holding a position, sparing the arms from the constant, exhausting fatigue of gripping handrails while trying to use tools. Surprisingly, the sensation of standing in a foot restraint is the closest a spacewalker comes to the feeling of terrestrial gravity during their hours outside the airlock. The upward pressure against the feet provides a welcome sense of orientation, allowing the brain to once again designate a floor and a ceiling within the vastness of the void. From this anchored position, an explorer can lean far back into the darkness, trusting the mechanical bond to hold them steady as they work on the sprawling solar arrays or complex radiator panels. The restraint acts as a vital fulcrum, enabling the body to generate the necessary leverage to move heavy components or apply pressure to stubborn connectors. It is a quiet, structural alliance that transforms a floating wanderer into a grounded technician, providing the stability required to conquer the complexities of orbital maintenance. This metallic landscape is not a silent or static environment, but a living structure that reacts violently to the shifting cycles of day and night. As raw sunlight hits the station during a day pass, the sudden, intense heat causes the massive aluminum modules and titanium trusses to undergo rapid thermal expansion. This expansion causes the metal to visibly flex and groan, sending deep, low-frequency vibrations through the structure that can be felt by anyone touching the exterior rails. The sound is not heard through the vacuum but is instead conducted as a visceral, haunting resonance that travels directly from the station through the gloves and into the suit's internal atmosphere. If we were to look closer at the joints between the pressurized modules, we might see the subtle, rhythmic shifts as the station breathes under the influence of the sun. This thermal movement is a constant companion during the orbital ballet, a metallic symphony of pops and creaks that signals the transition between the blistering heat of noon and the frigid chill of the shadow. For the astronaut, these sounds are a reassuring confirmation of the station's integrity, a tactile heartbeat of a massive machine performing its duty in the most extreme conditions imaginable. The expansion is powerful enough to slightly alter the alignment of delicate scientific instruments, requiring engineering teams to design complex compensation systems to maintain precision. It is a reminder that even the most advanced human technology is still a creature of physics, subject to the same expanding and contracting forces that shape the stars themselves. Deep within the focus of a mission, the perception of time undergoes a radical transformation as the most basic maneuvers are slowed to a deliberate, methodical crawl. Routine maintenance tasks that would take mere minutes on the ground often take 3 times longer to complete in the vacuum, primarily due to the restrictive nature of the pressurized suit. Every turn of a bolt or connection of a cable must be preceded by a series of safety checks, position adjustments, and constant communication with mission control to ensure no step is missed. This forced deceleration creates a hypnotic, meditative pace where the focus is narrowed to the immediate square inch of workspace, ignoring the staggering speed at which the entire station is travelling through the cosmos. As you rest quietly, perhaps noticing the slow, easy rhythm of your own thoughts, imagine the patience required to work in a world where haste is a lethal error. In the void, there are no quick fixes or impulsive movements. Every action is the result of a long, pre-planned sequence that has been practiced for years. The physical resistance of the suit's joints turns even simple reaching into a strenuous exercise that requires constant rest breaks to manage the buildup of CO2 and metabolic heat. This slow-motion reality enforces a deep sense of presence, a state of being where the past and the future dissolve into the singular, high-stakes moment of the present task. It is a disciplined endurance that tests the mental fortitude of the crew as much as their physical strength, turning a workday into an epic journey of incremental progress. Surprisingly, the preparation for this high-altitude performance begins deep beneath the surface of the Earth, in the silent turquoise depths of giant training pools. Hundreds of hours are spent practicing these exact maneuvers underwater in a facility known as the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, where the weightless environment of space is simulated with remarkable accuracy. Divers meticulously weight the astronauts' suits until they neither sink nor float, allowing them to move through the water with the same slow, drifting momentum they will encounter in orbit. This aquatic rehearsal is essential for developing the muscle memory required to handle large masses and navigate the station's complex geometry without the benefit of gravity. The memory of the pool remains a constant mental backdrop during the actual spacewalk, providing a familiar sensory map that helps the mind adapt to the alien reality of the vacuum. The viscosity of the water provides a form of drag that is absent in space, but the fundamental mechanics of hand-over-hand movement and tether management remain identical. Training in the pool allows the crew to identify potential snag hazards and refine the sequence of their tasks until the movements become an instinctive, fluid part of their biology. It is a long, immersive process of habituation that turns the terrifying unknown into a manageable professional routine. The transition from the warm blue water of the laboratory to the cold, black vacuum of space is the final step in a journey that began months or years earlier. During some of the most complex phases of the orbital ballet, the astronaut steps onto the end of a massive robotic arm to be carried across the station's exterior like a delicate piece on a chessboard. This incredibly sophisticated mechanical limb can stretch for over 50 feet, providing a mobile platform that can ferry crew and heavy components to areas that are otherwise inaccessible. Standing on a foot restraint at the very tip of the arm, the explorer experiences a unique and dizzying perspective as they are swept slowly through the void, looking down at the modules from a height of several stories. The movement is smooth and almost imperceptible, directed by a fellow crew member sitting inside the station's cupola or robotic workstation. If we were to look closer at the interface between the suit and the arm, we would see a complex dance of electronics and hydraulics, working in perfect synchronization to ensure a steady ride. The arm provides a stable, power-rich work platform that can be positioned with millimeter precision, allowing the worker to focus entirely on the task at hand without worrying about their own stability. Being ferried by the robotic arm is often described as one of the most surreal moments of a spacewalk, a time when the astronaut can truly appreciate the vast scale of the station as it floats against the backdrop of the Earth. It is a moment of total reliance on technology, a literal handing over of one's trajectory to a machine that represents the peak of international cooperation. As the orbital path inevitably carries the station into the absolute darkness of the night pass, the focus of the ballet shifts to the twin high-intensity helmet lights. These focused beams slice through the ink-black void to illuminate the tight work areas, creating a localized, artificial bubble of daylight in an otherwise endless abyss. Without the scattered light of an atmosphere, these beams are incredibly sharp and unidirectional, creating deep, harsh shadows that can obscure tools or handrails if not carefully managed. The lights are integrated into the suit's helmet assembly, automatically following the astronaut's gaze and ensuring that whatever they are looking at is clearly visible. Every moment of this high-stakes performance is meticulously monitored by a team of experts back on the ground, thanks to high-definition cameras mounted on the suit's helmet and shoulders. These tiny, rugged lenses transmit the precise, dizzying view of the astronaut back to mission control, allowing flight controllers and engineers to see exactly what the worker sees in real time. This video feed is often accompanied by a constant stream of telemetry data, tracking the suit's oxygen levels, battery status, and even the astronaut's heart rate as they navigate the exterior. The presence of the camera creates a unique psychological bond, a feeling of being guided and watched by 1,000 eyes located thousands of miles below. If we were to look closer at the displays in mission control, we would see the intense focus of the ground crew as they analyze every movement and provide verbal guidance through the radio link. This connection ensures that the isolated explorer is never truly alone, providing a deep well of technical support and moral encouragement throughout the long hours of the mission. The cameras capture the raw beauty of the Earth as it rolls by in the background, providing a perspective that is shared with millions of people who can only dream of such a view. This digital transparency is a vital component of the mission's success, allowing for collaborative problem-solving when a tool jams or a connector refuses to seat properly. It is the final technological link in the chain that connects the orbital ballet to the rest of humanity. The final, most critical element of the orbital ballet is the constant coordination between the two spacewalking partners who must work in perfect synchronization to maintain their safety. They must constantly coordinate their orientation and movement to avoid twisting their long safety tethers into dangerous knots or snagging them on the station's many protruding sensors and antennas. This social contract of survival requires a continuous verbal dialogue, calling out every movement and checking each other's equipment for signs of wear or loose tethers. They are each other's primary safety net, ready to provide immediate assistance if a partner becomes disoriented or suffers a suit malfunction. As you sink into the final layers of relaxation, consider the profound trust that exists between these two figures floating in the dark. They are a single, coordinated unit, bound together by a shared mission and a mutual reliance on the machines that keep them alive. This partnership is the ultimate expression of the human element in space, a reminder that no matter how advanced the technology becomes, the success of the journey depends on the bond between individuals. They watch each other's backs as the sun sets, ensuring that the safety hooks are secure and the lights are functioning correctly. This constant vigilance is the quiet, invisible rhythm of the ballet, a commitment to never let the other go as they navigate the infinite. As they navigate the infinite, the most striking quality of the environment is the total, unyielding absence of sound that exists beyond the suit's fragile membrane. Because there are no air molecules to transmit pressure waves, the hard vacuum of space is a realm where explosions would occur in perfect stillness, and a falling hammer would make no impact. The exterior universe is rendered entirely mute, transforming the staggering visual drama of the cosmos into a silent spectral film. This lack of ambient noise creates a sensory vacuum that the human mind initially struggles to process, as every familiar terrestrial cue for distance and scale simply vanishes. Without the whistle of wind or the hum of life, the void feels both infinitely large and impossibly close. It is an absolute heavy quiet that forces the explorer to confront the stark reality of their isolation from the vibrant, noisy world they left behind. Surprisingly, The only external noises that reach the astronaut arrive not as waves in the air, but as deep tactile vibrations travelling through the metal handrails and into the suit's rigid structure. When a tool clicks into a socket or a partner taps on a module, the mechanical energy is conducted through the gloves and up the bones of the arms, registering as a dull internal resonance. This phenomenon of bone conduction allows the explorer to hear the station with their body, turning the cold aluminum truss into a musical instrument of sorts. Feeling the rhythmic groaning of the expanding station through the fingertips provides a strange, grounding sense of connection to the physical reality of the machine. These vibrations are the only whispers from the outside world, a secret language of impact and movement that bypasses the ears and speaks directly to the nerves. It is a primal, skeletal form of hearing that anchors the spacewalker to their surroundings when the sky itself has gone silent. This structure of silence is occasionally broken by the intermittent crackle of radio communication, bringing the familiar and deeply comforting voices of earthbound flight controllers from the world below. These transmissions are the only thread connecting the isolated worker to the collective intelligence and support of thousands of engineers on the ground. Hearing a calm voice from Houston or Star City provides an immediate psychological anchor, a reminder that the mission is a shared human endeavour. The subtle static and the digital clip of the radio signal become textures of home, breaking the oppressive quiet with the technical language of survival. As you lie still, notice the soft background sounds of your own environment and how they provide a constant, unconscious map of safety. High above, the radio link is the only bridge across the light years of silence, a fragile tether of sound that keeps the mind from drifting as far as the body. If we were to look closer at the psychological toll of the mission, we would find that when these communications temporarily drop, the resulting isolation is deeper than anything ever experienced on Earth. During a loss of signal event, the radio falls silent, leaving the astronaut alone with only the internal sounds of their own life support. This absolute lack of human contact creates a sudden, heavy sense of detachment from the species, as if the station were a solitary island in an infinite dark sea. The silence becomes a tangible weight, pressing against the ears and forcing a sudden inward focus on the fragility of the moment. Without the constant chatter of telemetry and guidance, the scale of the void becomes overwhelming, reminding the explorer of their singular presence in the abyss. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated solitude, where the only witness to one's existence is the turning earth and the unblinking stars. Deep within the sealed environment of the helmet, the grinding of the astronaut's own joints becomes surprisingly and sometimes alarmingly audible to the wearer. In the absence of external noise, the internal sounds of the body are amplified and conducted through the skull, making every movement a mechanical event. The sliding of tendons and the soft clicking of the jaw resonate within the pressurized bubble, turning the human form into a noisy organic machine. This internal soundscape is usually ignored on Earth, drowned out by the constant hum of the atmosphere, but here it becomes a dominant sensory feature. Moving a shoulder to reach for a tether results in a chorus of pops and rustles that feel like they are occurring throughout the entire universe. It is a strange, intimate reality that highlights the profound boundary between the biological inner world and the sterile, silent outer world. The rhythmic whir of the life support fan serves as a constant, reassuring auditory companion throughout the long, arduous hours of the spacewalk. This subtle, high-pitched hum is the sound of moving air, the very breath of the suit that prevents the accumulation of toxic gases. It acts as a form of white noise, filling the silence of the vacuum with a predictable mechanical pulse that helps to soothe the nervous system. As long as that fan continues its steady rotation, the astronaut knows that the primary life support system is successfully shielding them from the void. Notice how the steady, repetitive sounds in your own space can act as a lullaby, grounding your consciousness in a predictable rhythm. In space, this mechanical whir becomes the most precious music in the world, a signal of life persisting in a realm where life should not exist. If we were to examine the suit's safety design, we would see that sudden, high-pitched warning tones are purposely engineered to pierce through the hypnotic hum of the suit. These digital alarms are calibrated to be impossible to ignore, designed with sharp frequencies that command immediate attention even during the most intense manual labour. They serve as the voice of the suit's computer, signalling changes in pressure, oxygen flow, or battery health that require instant intervention. The contrast between the steady whir of the fan and the sudden, urgent shriek of a caution tone is enough to spike the adrenaline and clear the mind instantly. These sounds are the final line of defense, a violent intrusion of reality into the dreamlike state of floating. They remind the explorer that the peaceful, silent environment is a lethal illusion, maintained only by the constant, perfect operation of the machinery. Breathing transforms into a loud, conscious rhythm that anchors the mind and provides a steady cadence during particularly stressful or complex maneuvers. Each inhalation and exhalation is audible as a rush of air against the visor, creating a private, rhythmic weather system inside the helmet. This sound becomes a primary focus, a way for the astronaut to monitor their own physical state and pace their exertion. By consciously slowing the breath, they can lower their heart rate and manage the metabolic heat that the suit must work to remove. The sound of one's own breath becomes a meditation, a steady, life-affirming sound that persists against the backdrop of the eternal silence outside. It is the most basic, primal evidence of the struggle to survive, a rhythmic push and pull of air that mirrors the tides of the planet below. Each heartbeat can sometimes be physically felt and heard within the ears, amplifying the basic, visceral sense of existence in an environment of total emptiness. In moments of exertion or high tension, the thudding of the heart resonates through the chest and into the head, becoming a powerful, internal drum beat. This sound serves as a constant biofeedback loop, reminding the explorer of the immense energy their body is expending to perform in the vacuum. It is a deeply grounding sensation, a reminder that even while suspended over a bottomless abyss, the life force remains strong and rhythmic. As you sink into your bed, feel your own heartbeat slowing as you relax, matching the peaceful rhythm of your breath. In the silence of the vacuum, that same heartbeat is a defiant, persistent pulse of life that echoes through the silence of the stars. This profound contrast between the immense visual chaos of the moving Earth and the strict auditory isolation of the suit defines the entire spacewalk experience. While the eyes are bombarded by the brilliant light of sunrises, the swirling clouds of hurricanes, and the glittering cities of the night, the ears are locked in a tiny mechanical room. This sensory mismatch creates a unique psychological state, a feeling of being a silent ghost observing a vibrant, living world from a distance. The mind must bridge the gap between the majestic, silent drama of the cosmos and the intimate, noisy reality of the body. It is a duality that makes the experience feel simultaneously like a grand cinematic epic and a private internal confession. Ultimately, the silence of the vacuum is not just an absence of sound, but a presence that forces the human spirit to look inward as it reaches outward into the infinite. Reaching outward into the infinite requires an invisible resilience against the ghosts of the solar system. Deep within the orbital path, microscopic fragments of ancient comets and shattered asteroids streak through the void at speeds that easily exceed 20,000 miles per hour. These tiny primordial travelers are essentially invisible to the human eye, moving with such staggering kinetic energy that even a grain of dust possesses the destructive power of a high-velocity bullet. The void is not truly empty, but rather populated by these silent, speeding sentinels that turn the act of floating into a high-stakes encounter with the invisible. It is a haunting reality where the smallest, most insignificant particle can become the most significant threat to a fragile human existence. To withstand these lethal microscopic projectiles, the outer skin of the suit is meticulously constructed from a complex hierarchy of advanced, high-performance textiles. Specially woven exterior fabrics are heavily layered in a precise sequence designed to shatter and catch these tiny bullets before they can penetrate the vital pressure bladder. When a micrometeoroid strikes the outermost layer, the immense impact energy causes the projectile to instantly disintegrate into a cloud of even smaller, less harmful fragments. These secondary remnants are then trapped within deep, resilient webs of aluminized mylar and high-strength synthetic fibers, effectively absorbing the remaining shock. This structure functions as a flexible, multi-layered bumper, turning the suit into a wearable fortress that is remarkably resilient despite its relative thinness. Each layer is engineered with a specific density and weave pattern to ensure that the kinetic energy is dispersed across the widest possible area. This invisible defense occurs in a fraction of a second, a silent victory of human engineering over the raw, unbridled forces of the cosmos. It allows the explorer to move with confidence through a minefield of hypervelocity dust, protected by a textile shield that is as sophisticated as any metallic hull. The fabric is not just a covering, it is an active, kinetic filter that sifts the deadly speed of the universe into a manageable stillness. While the suit manages the smallest threats, an immense and watchful infrastructure on the ground guards against the larger, more catastrophic remnants of human history. Radar networks scattered across the globe constantly track thousands of larger debris fragments, from spent rocket stages to abandoned satellites, to ensure a clear orbital path for the station and its crew. These unseen watchers monitor every piece of orbiting shrapnel larger than a marble, calculating complex trajectories to predict any potential intersection with the floating outpost. If a piece of debris is projected to pass too close, the entire station may undergo a precise slow-motion avoidance maneuver to steer clear of the danger. As you feel the weight of your own body resting peacefully against the mattress, entirely shielded by the heavy gravity of Earth, imagine the dedicated teams working in the silence of mission control to preserve that same safety in orbit. They act as the ultimate sentries, mapping the invisible hazards of a crowded sky to provide a secure environment for the work to continue. This constant vigilance transforms the chaotic junkyard of low Earth orbit into a carefully managed corridor where every significant hazard is logged and anticipated. It is a global effort of cooperation and surveillance, ensuring that the human presence in the void is never blind to the high-speed debris that shares its path. This unseen layer of protection is the first line of defense, keeping the infinite reaches of space from becoming a closed doorway. Beyond the kinetic threats, a much subtler and more chemical form of erosion constantly tests the integrity of everything exposed to the orbital environment. Highly reactive atomic oxygen, found at the very fringes of the upper atmosphere, slowly and persistently erodes the protective outer layers of the equipment over time. These individual oxygen atoms, split by intense solar ultraviolet radiation, behave with an aggressive chemical hunger that seeks to oxidize and degrade even the most robust synthetic polymers. This process creates a slow, invisible rusting that turns pristine white surfaces into a dull, eroded landscape of microscopic pits and fissures. If we were to look closer at the surface of the station, we would see the evidence of this persistent chemical weathering in the form of fading colours and brittle textures on the thermal blankets. Every hour spent outside in this corrosive mist is a test of the material's chemical resilience, requiring specialised coatings to stave off the slow decay. This interaction between the vacuum and the remains of our atmosphere creates a unique, local environment that is far more active and hostile than deep, empty space. It is a slow-motion battle where the very air we need to survive becomes a corrosive adversary when stripped down to its most basic atomic form. The suit's outer fabric must be specifically treated to resist this invisible fog, ensuring that the layers remain supple and strong through years of service. Protection also extends to the most sensitive sensory interface, where the eyes must gaze directly into the raw, unfiltered brilliance of the local star. The gold film on the outer visor is thin enough for the astronaut to see through with remarkable clarity, yet it is dense enough to reflect nearly all of the blinding ultraviolet and infrared rays. This precious metal coating is applied in a vacuum chamber, creating a perfectly uniform, shimmering barrier that shields the delicate tissues of the eye from solar radiation. Surprisingly, this thin layer of gold also serves a vital thermal purpose, reflecting the intense radiant heat of the sun away from the helmet to prevent the internal temperature from skyrocketing. It acts as a selective filter, allowing visible light to pass through, while turning back the invisible thermal energy that would bake the interior of the suit. This dual functionality is a testament to the elegance of using elemental properties to solve complex aerospace challenges. The gold is not there for vanity, but as a critical high-performance optical component that makes human observation possible in a realm of lethal light. When the visor is lowered, it creates a mirror-like finish that reflects the entire curved horizon of the Earth, effectively turning the explorer into a golden-eyed observer of the infinite. It is a beautiful synthesis of utility and majesty, allowing the gaze to linger on the wonders of the sun without fear. While the gold visor blocks the light, a much more pervasive and invisible force continuously passes right through the astronaut's body without any physical sensation. High-energy cosmic radiation, consisting of heavy ions and solar protons, streams through the vacuum and penetrates the layers of the suit with ease. This silent, relentless bombardment is meticulously tracked by personal dosimeters, small electronic devices tucked into the suit that count every single strike of ionizing energy. Notice the profound, quiet safety of your current location, where miles of thick atmosphere act as a massive leaden shield against these same cosmic rays. In the thin, high-altitude environment of orbit, the body becomes a passive recipient of these ancient stellar remnants that have travelled for millions of years to reach this point. The dosimeter's data is carefully analysed by medical teams on the ground to ensure that no single individual exceeds the safe limits of exposure over their career. This invisible transit of energy is a constant, sobering reminder that the void is not a sanctuary, but an active, energetic environment that touches the very core of human biology. It is a quiet, microscopic reality that connects the health of the astronaut to the long-term cycles of the sun and the distant activities of the galaxy. Every strike recorded by the device is a data point in the ongoing study of how life adapts to the rigours of the deep dark. In this environment of extremes, even the most basic substances behave in ways that defy all earthly intuition and logic. Exposed droplets of water, if accidentally released from a cooling line or a waste port, would instantly boil and freeze simultaneously when introduced to the raw vacuum. This paradox occurs because the lack of atmospheric pressure causes the liquid to boil away into vapour at any temperature, while the extreme cold of the shadow simultaneously extracts heat. The result is a chaotic, crystalline explosion of boiling snow, a flurry of ice crystals that glitters in the sunlight like a cloud of tiny frozen stars. Seeing these shimmering shards of ice drift away from the station is a beautiful, yet terrifying illustration of how quickly the vacuum can tear apart the familiar structures of life. It serves as a visual warning of what would happen to the internal fluids of a human body if it were ever exposed to the unshielded void. The boiling snow represents the total loss of environmental equilibrium, a state where the rules of temperature and pressure are twisted into a single, impossible moment of phase change. It is a striking sensory reminder that the vacuum is a landscape where the most common element of home becomes a volatile, unearthly spectre. Even the simplest molecules are forced into a violent crystalline dance by the absence of an atmosphere. The hazards of the void are not limited to the primordial or the chemical, but also include the tiny man-made relics of our own technological past. Even microscopic flecks of old satellite paint strike with enough kinetic energy to crater a heavy glass window or tear through several layers of reinforced fabric. These tiny particles are essentially orbiting at the same extreme speeds as micrometeoroids, turning a harmless piece of pigment into a lethal, high-velocity projectile. Surprisingly, the universe turns our own cast-off waste into a high-speed adversary, proving that nothing truly disappears once it is launched into the orbital flow. A simple impact from a piece of paint no larger than a grain of salt can leave a distinct, white-rimmed pit in the station's reinforced aluminum hull. These impact craters are carefully photographed and mapped by the crew, serving as a visceral record of the hidden dangers that populate the supposedly empty space. This microscopic shrapnel is a reminder that we carry our history with us into the stars, and that the environment we inhabit is shaped as much by our actions as by physics. It reinforces the need for the suit's layered defense, which must be equally prepared for a grain of ancient comet dust or a fragment of a forgotten rocket. The sky is filled with these tiny speeding monuments to our first steps into the universe. To allow the human occupant to function within this defensive cocoon, the internal suit pressure is carefully maintained at only 4 pounds per square inch. This specific low pressure is a delicate compromise designed to provide enough oxygen for the lungs to function, while keeping the suit's joints flexible enough to bend. If the suit were pressurized to a full terrestrial atmosphere, it would become so rigid that the astronaut would be unable to move their limbs against the internal force. As you let your own muscles soften and release their tension, imagine the constant labour of fighting against your own clothing with every single breath. The astronaut must move with a slow, deliberate cadence, husbanding their energy to avoid the exhaustion that comes from working inside a human-shaped balloon. This low-pressure environment also requires a lengthy pre-breathe period before the spacewalk to purge nitrogen from the blood and prevent the bends. It is a physiological tightrope, where the requirements of the machine and the requirements of the body must be perfectly balanced. The suit is not just a shield, it is a finely tuned atmospheric regulator that allows the body to exist in a state that is technically impossible for its biology. Every movement is a calculated negotiation with the air pressure that keeps the lungs inflated and the blood flowing in the dark. This complex, layered defense mechanism beautifully represents a modern pinnacle of material science, a synthesis of decades of research into the limits of survival. Every thread of Kevlar, every molecule of gold, and every sensor in the dosimeter works in a silent, perfectly coordinated harmony to preserve a single human life. It is a masterpiece of integration, where the most disparate materials are brought together to create a wearable ecosystem that is as reliable as it is sophisticated. This cocoon is the ultimate expression of human ingenuity, a testament to our ability to dream of other worlds and then build the tools necessary to walk upon them. Ultimately, the success of a spacewalk is measured in the quiet, continued heartbeat of the person inside the shield. The layered defense stands as an absolute barrier between the warm, wet reality of a human being and the cold, kinetic, and radioactive reality of the deep cosmos. To inhabit this structure is to experience the ultimate peace of mind that comes from knowing the very best of our technology is working tirelessly on your behalf. As the explorer returns to the safety of the airlock, they shed this heavy, high-tech skin with a sense of profound gratitude for the materials that kept the infinite at bay. The journey through the microscopic hazards is a quiet victory of the mind over the vacuum, a legacy of protection that allows us to keep reaching further. Reaching further into the celestial choreography, the transition from the absolute deep of night to the staggering brilliance of day occurs with a suddenness that feels nearly impossible. Sunrises detonate across the curved horizon with a silent, incandescent intensity, completely lacking any protective atmosphere to soften the incoming light into a gradual terrestrial dawn. Without the millions of tons of air required to scatter blue wavelengths and create a soft morning glow, the sun simply arrives as a total, unfiltered shattering of the darkness. 1 microsecond, the universe is a cathedral of ink and distant stars, and the next it is flooded with a raw, blinding radiance that strikes the station with the force of a visual explosion. This instantaneous sunrise provides no warning, no slow warming of the sky, only the immediate and overwhelming presence of the solar furnace. It is a sensory shock that forces the mind to accept a world without twilight, where light and shadow exist in a state of permanent, violent confrontation. The rapid-fire transition occurs every 90 minutes, turning the orbital journey into a frantic high-speed loop of visual extremes that dictates the very rhythm of human survival. As the solar disk clears the horizon, the metallic surfaces of the station ignite with a brilliant mirror-like reflection that washes out the stars. It is the ultimate morning, arriving with a cosmic power that renders the softest earthly sunrise a mere whisper by comparison. Surprisingly, the universe does not just change in light, but undergoes a thermal transformation that is equally abrupt and staggering to the senses. Temperatures can plummet or soar by hundreds of degrees within a matter of minutes, as solar shadows shift across the intricate metallic surfaces of the suit and station. In the direct, unfiltered path of the sun, the exterior of the white thermal blankets can bake at over 250 degrees Fahrenheit. This structure of life support must be incredibly reactive, as automated thermostats within the primary backpack begin to pump water through the cooling garment with a sense of mechanical urgency. These systems work frantically to counterbalance the brutal, sudden thermal swings that threaten the internal equilibrium of the human occupant. As the heat of the sun begins to bake the outer layers, the suit's internal computer detects the rise and accelerates the flow of chilled water through the hundreds of tiny, skin-tight tubes. Conversely, when the cold of the shadow takes hold, the system must modulate the flow to ensure the body's own metabolic heat is retained rather than lost to the void. It is a constant, invisible struggle for balance, a high-speed negotiation between the freezing dark and the scorching light. This internal river of water acts as the primary shield, keeping the biological core at a steady, peaceful temperature, while the world outside fluctuates by 500 degrees. The humming pumps and whirring valves are the unsung conductors of this thermal symphony, reacting to the environment faster than any human ever could. Without this automated vigilance, the astronaut would be overwhelmed by the heat of the sun or the chill of the void in a matter of heartbeats. This invisible layer of regulation allows the mind to stay focused on the work at hand while the machine manages the chaos of the elements. Feel the warmth of your own room, the stable, gentle temperature of the air as it rests against your skin in a quiet, unchanging embrace. If we were to look closer at the stars themselves during the night pass, they remain entirely still and piercing, never once twinkling or wavering in their intensity. On Earth, the thick, turbulent layers of the atmosphere refract and distort the incoming starlight, creating the familiar, shimmering dance we see from our backyards. Above that air, every distant sun is a static, unwavering pinprick of light that burns with a clarity that is almost painful to behold. Without the haze of moisture and dust to soften their edges, the constellations appear in their true geometric perfection against the absolute blackness of the void. This lack of scintillation gives the heavens a heavy crystalline quality, as if the stars were diamonds frozen forever in a sea of dark glass. It is a view that provides a staggering sense of depth, allowing the eye to peer through the local neighbourhood and into the ancient, unblinking heart of the galaxy. Deep within the reach of the naked eye, the dense centre of the Milky Way galaxy glows as a sharply defined, dusty band stretched across the infinite void. Without the interference of light pollution or atmospheric scattering, the galactic core reveals its complex structure of glowing gas clouds and dark, silhouette-like ribbons of cosmic dust. This celestial river appears remarkably bright and textured, a sprawling tapestry of light that seems close enough to touch. The sheer volume of stars packed into this central region creates a soft, milky luminescence that provides a faint, ghostly illumination to the surrounding structures of the station. Observing this galactic anchor reminds the explorer that they are not just orbiting a planet, but are part of a much larger, swirling island of light drifting through the deep. It is a magnificent, silent presence that dominates the background, a reminder of the immense scale of the home we inhabit within the wider universe. This dusty band serves as a visual compass for the soul, anchoring the traveller to the massive spiral structure of our galactic home. It provides a sense of perspective that makes even the largest orbital station feel like a tiny, insignificant speck in a much grander design. To witness the galaxy in such raw, unfiltered detail is to truly understand the beauty of the vast emptiness that lies between the stars. Take a moment to notice the profound stillness of your own body, the way your breath moves in a slow, natural cycle, while the entire galaxy drifts in its silent, ancient rotation. Surprisingly, the darkness of the night pass is never truly absolute, as reflected Earthshine often bathes the metallic underbelly of the space station in a soft, ghostly blue glow. This secondary light is the sun's radiance bouncing off the massive white cloud decks and sapphire oceans of the planet below, acting like a giant soft lamp for the orbiting complex. It illuminates the shaded modules with a faint ethereal luminescence that allows the astronaut to see their surroundings without the need for artificial lamps. This blue-tinted light is remarkably gentle, smoothing out the harsh edges of the hardware and providing a spectral, dreamlike quality to the work environment. It creates a visual connection between the homeworld and the station, a reminder that even in the dark the Earth is always sharing its light. This Earthshine transforms the station into a glowing azure phantom that glides silently through the shadows of the orbital night. The softness of this reflection is a welcome relief for eyes that have been battered by the high contrast glare of the sunlit day pass. It allows the features of the planet's surface to be visible even in the dark, revealing the texture of the oceans and the ghostly outlines of the land. This spectral light is the quiet breath of the planet, a gentle reminder of the life and warmth that persist beneath the silent void. Without any ambient light bouncing around through an atmosphere, shadows cast directly by the sun are impossibly black and completely sharp-edged. On Earth, the air molecules scatter light into the shadows, creating a soft transition and allowing us to see details even in the shade. In the vacuum, the line between light and dark is absolute, a binary world where anything not in the direct path of the sun vanishes into a total bottomless obscurity. This lack of a penumbra can be deeply disorienting, as a hand or a tool can seemingly disappear as soon as it crosses that invisible, razor-sharp boundary. Navigating this landscape requires a constant mental adjustment, as the eyes struggle to find detail in the ink-black voids that pepper the sunlit trusses. It is a world of pure contrast, a stark visual reality where light and dark do not mingle, but exist as two separate and unyielding dimensions. The darkness of these shadows is so intense that it feels like a physical barrier, a wall of non-existence that cuts through the metallic station. If an astronaut were to reach into a shadow to find a handrail, they would be reaching into a blind abyss that offers no visual feedback. This necessitates the use of high-intensity helmet lights, even during the brightest sunlit periods of the mission, just to illuminate the dark corners of the work area. Lowering the gold visor is a strict and non-negotiable safety necessity before the station crosses the terminator line into the sudden, blinding daylight. This protective shield must be deployed as a ritual of survival, ensuring that the eyes are not instantly overwhelmed by the detonation of the upcoming sunrise. The thin, metallic film acts as the primary barrier against the surge of radiation that accompanies the arrival of the sun, protecting the delicate internal environment of the helmet. As the countdown to dawn approaches, the astronaut reaches up with a bulky, pressurized glove to slide the visor into place, hearing the soft mechanical click of the latch. This action signals a transition from the soft blue of Earthshine to the high-stakes, golden filtered reality of the solar day. It is a moment of preparation, a closing of the shield before the silent, incandescent storm of light hits the station once again. This golden barrier is the last line of defense for the human observer, a necessary filter that turns a lethal glare into a manageable view. It allows the work to continue in the center of the solar fire, providing the clarity needed to handle complex tools and delicate hardware. The visor is a symbol of the explorer's adaptation, a tool that turns a hostile environment into a place of observation and discovery. This structure of light and shadow is punctuated by the legendary golden hour of orbital twilight, which lasts only a few fleeting seconds before total darkness falls. While terrestrial sunsets can linger for nearly an hour as the sun sinks through the thick lower atmosphere, the orbital sunset is a rapid, high-speed descent into the abyss. For a brief, magical moment, the edge of the Earth's atmosphere catches the light, glowing with a brilliant saturated orange and deep indigo that defies description. This thin ribbon of colour is the only indication of the transition, a spectacular but momentary bridge between the blinding day and the silent night. It is a sight that is often missed if the explorer is focused on a task, as it vanishes almost as quickly as it appears. This brevity makes the orbital sunset a precious, sought-after experience, a fleeting glimpse of planetary beauty that marks the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. Watching this rapid display of colour provides a moment of profound, quiet awe that transcends the technical requirements of the mission. It is the only time the atmosphere reveals itself as a vibrant, colourful shield rather than a transparent void. Then, just as the eye begins to process the saturation, the colours flatten and the station is plunged once again into the heavy, velvet dark of the orbital pass. Because the mission cannot stop for the darkness, astronauts rigorously train to execute complex mechanical repairs, relying completely on narrow, focused beams of artificial light. During the night pass, the world is reduced to the small, circular area, illuminated by the high-intensity lamps mounted on the helmet and suit. Every turn of a wrench and every connection of a wire must be performed within this tight, artificial bubble, while the rest of the universe remains a total, unseeing blackness. This requires an immense level of concentration and spatial awareness, as the worker must maintain their orientation without the help of a visible horizon. The beams catch the glittering textures of the hardware and the white fabric of the partner's suit, creating a small, high-contrast theatre of industry in the void. It is a disciplined, technical dance performed in the centre of a lightless ocean, where human ingenuity provides its own sun to keep the work moving forward. The training for these dark pass repairs is exhaustive, ensuring that every movement is committed to muscle memory and can be executed with precision. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, which refuses to be deterred by the absence of the sun. As the beams slice through the dark, they reveal the intricate beauty of the machine that sustains us, a beacon of light in the infinite silence. This beacon of light in the infinite silence is not merely a physical tool, but the fragile manifestation of a profound psychological transformation that begins the moment the hatch swings open. Trusting your entire existence to a few thin millimeters of synthetic fabric requires a deliberate, immense surrender of the most basic human survival instincts that have protected our species for millions of years. On the ground, the mind is hardwired to fear the absence of air and the presence of a bottomless drop. Yet here, one must actively suppress that primal alarm to remain functional and calm. The thin layers of the pressure bladder and the thermal cover become the only world that truly matters, a flexible, multi-layered boundary between human consciousness and absolute annihilation. To inhabit this space is to enter a state of radical, beautiful vulnerability, where the cold logic of the machine replaces the panicked intuition of the biological animal. You learn to move with a steady, calculated grace that contradicts the inherent lethal danger of the situation, finding a strange peace in the reliability of every seam, seal, and stitch. Every quiet, rhythmic rustle of the inner suit against your skin is a persistent reminder of this delicate, unspoken contract between the self and the vast vacuum of the void. It is a psychological leap of faith that most humans never have to take, a quiet acceptance of the fact that your continued life is held together by the skill of a seamstress and the precision of a material chemist. This surrender is the first essential step toward true mastery of the orbital environment, allowing the spirit to soar through the stars while the body is safely cocooned in a high-tech white shell. The eye searches frantically for a flaw, a horizon, or a sense of scale, but finds only the infinite sapphire curvature of the blue marble spinning miles below in total silence. This overwhelming sight can momentarily overwhelm the inner ear's silent equilibrium, sending a jolt of primal panic through the nervous system as the brain struggles to comprehend its own weightless suspension. You feel as though you are plummeting toward the clouds, yet you are perfectly stationary relative to the cold, golden handrails locked firmly in your grip. As you rest now in the absolute stability of your own room, notice how the surface beneath you supports your weight without question or hesitation. In the void, that stability is a fragile mental construct, a choice to believe in the reality of the station, despite the visual evidence of the terrifying abyss. Overcoming this vertigo is an exercise in supreme cognitive discipline, training the mind to trust the mechanical anchors and the tether lines rather than the deceptive, dizzying messages sent by the optic nerve. If we were to look closer at the specific methods used to manage this overwhelming scale, we would find a technique of intense, singular concentration that boundaries the world. Narrowing your focus to a single, unremarkable bolt or a specific electrical connector helps to ground the mind against the staggering, incomprehensible magnitude of the celestial surroundings. By shrinking the world down to the size of a few square inches of hardware, the astronaut creates a manageable, localized reality that successfully excludes the terrifying vastness of the cosmic theatre. This psychological tunnel vision is a vital tool for survival, allowing the worker to perform complex, high-stakes repairs without being paralyzed by the staggering view of the infinity. The cold, metallic texture of a fastener becomes a tactile anchor, a small piece of known human reality that provides a much-needed sense of control and purpose. You find a deep, quiet comfort in the familiar geometry of the tools and the predictable, mechanical resistance of the hardware. Treating the station as a simple, elegant mechanical puzzle, this narrow focus creates a hypnotic, meditative state where the only thing in existence is the next turn of the wrench or the precise click of a locking latch. It is a protective, mental barrier of professional intent, shielding the consciousness from the crushing weight of the infinite and the silent judgment of the stars. In these moments, the station is no longer a fragile, lonely outpost in the dark, but a vibrant workshop where every detail is essential and every action is deeply deliberate. Surprisingly, this unique and isolated vantage point permanently dissolves the petty earthly biases that often define and divide our lives on the surface of the planet. Witnessing the world in its entirety, without the artificial lines of political borders or the noise of human conflict, fosters a deep and lifelong sense of planetary unity that transcends all local identity. From this incredible height, the commonality of the human experience becomes an undeniable, visceral truth that renders all historical disputes entirely meaningless and small. You see a single, breathing, integrated entity where every ecosystem is intimately connected and every life is part of a delicate shared destiny in the dark. The realization that all of human history and every person you have ever known is contained within that one fragile, glowing orb is both humbling and fundamentally transformative. It creates a fierce, protective instinct for the homeworld, a desire to serve the planet as a single living organism rather than a collection of competing interests. This perspective is not something that can be easily unlearned. It becomes a fundamental guiding part of the astronaut's identity long after they return to the heavy gravity of the surface. It is a quiet internal shift that aligns the soul with the rhythmic rotation of the globe, replacing the noise of the self with the silent majesty of the whole. To see the Earth as a solitary, magnificent ship in the dark is to realize with absolute certainty that we are all, quite literally, in this together. This structure of unity extends inward to the intensely personal relationship between the two figures floating together in the silent dark of the night pass. Spacewalking partners naturally develop a profound, unspoken trust that is firmly and permanently rooted in the absolute requirement of mutual survival and mechanical vigilance. Every movement is watched by the other, every tether is double-checked, and every potential hazard is communicated with a level of intimacy that few other human professions can ever hope to match. This bond transcends the need for words, as the two explorers become a single, coordinated organism moving with a shared rhythm through the vacuum of the void. You feel the presence of your partner through the subtle vibrations of the station and the familiar cadence of the radio chatter, knowing they are your only immediate lifeline. This total reliance creates a deep, emotional resonance that often results in friendships that remain unbroken for the rest of their lives on Earth. As you relax further into the quiet of your room, consider the value of those you trust in your own life, the people who provide a safety net when things feel uncertain. High above the atmosphere, that trust is both a mechanical and a psychological necessity, a shared commitment to bring each other home safely to the airlock. It is a beautiful human bridge across the cold void, proving that even in the most sterile environment, the warmth of human connection remains the ultimate defense. Deep within the intense focus of the mission, a stark and haunting realization occasionally washes over the crew with a sudden chilling clarity that is impossible to ignore. It is the overwhelming awareness of being physically and completely detached from the entire human species, suspended in a realm where no other form of life can possibly exist. For those few, solitary hours outside the airlock, you are a tiny, biological island, separated from the billions of people below by a distance that feels more like 1,000 years than 100 miles. This sense of profound, cosmic isolation is not necessarily frightening, but it is deeply and irrevocably sobering for the mind to process in the silence. You are a representative of the entire species, yet you are entirely removed from its warmth, its noise, its smells, and its chaotic daily concerns. The station becomes your only home, a metallic high-tech sanctuary that is the only place in the infinite where you truly belong for the duration of the walk. This realization highlights the incredible, almost impossible fragility of the human presence in space, a tiny spark of consciousness in a vast and indifferent dark. It forces direct confrontation with the true scale of the universe and the remarkable audacity of the human attempt to inhabit and understand it. This moment of detachment is a psychological threshold, a realization that while you are from the Earth, you are currently and entirely of the stars. Surprisingly, the internal perception of time seems to stretch and wildly dilate when executing critical zero-margin maneuvers outside the safety of the airlock. Seconds can feel like long, luxurious minutes as the brain accelerates its processing speed to manage the high-stakes complexity of a difficult repair or a dangerous move. This expanded sense of the present allows for a level of focus and mechanical precision that is rarely achieved in the distracted, noisy environment of the surface. The world slows down to the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat and the constant whispering flow of oxygen, turning a few minutes of labour into an epic journey. You become intimately and acutely aware of every micro-movement of your fingers and every subtle, shifting change in the suit's internal pressure and thermal balance. This time dilation is a byproduct of the extreme stakes, a survival mechanism that turns the human mind into a high-speed, perfect processor of environmental data. In your current state of deep relaxation, notice how time seems to soften and lose its sharp edges as you drift slowly toward the boundary of sleep. In orbit, that same softening is a tool of professional excellence, a way to expand the window of opportunity within a mission governed by the clock. It is a mastery of the singular moment, a psychological expansion that allows the human mind to outpace the rapid, unyielding mechanics of the orbital path. If we were to look closer at the emotional impact of this experience, we would find that even highly trained and logical engineers are often left totally speechless. Taking a rare, deliberate moment to simply observe the raw, unfiltered majesty of the cosmos often completely overrides the analytical and technical parts of the human brain. The sheer, overwhelming beauty of the stars against the absolute blackness, or the glowing curve of the planet simply defies the descriptive power of human language. You find yourself entirely unable to articulate the depth of the experience, as the standard vocabulary of aerospace engineering falls short of the breathtaking reality of the view. This speechlessness is a form of profound respect, a recognition that some things in the universe are too grand and too ancient to be captured in a report. It is a moment where the scientist and the poet within the astronaut finally become one, silenced by the staggering scale of the creation. This awe is a vital and nourishing part of the journey, a reminder that the mission is not just about repairs, but about the human encounter with the infinite. It is a humbling experience that strips away the ego and leaves only a sense of wonder and deep, quiet gratitude for the opportunity. Even the most complex machine is secondary to the simple, breathtaking fact of being there, a silent, solitary witness to the majesty of the universe. Returning to the cramped, noisy and welcoming safety of the airlock brings a wave of profound, soul-deep relief that is mixed with complete physical exhaustion. As the heavy hatch is finally sealed and the pressure begins to climb, the crushing weight of the responsibility and the danger begins to lift. The transition from the silent, deadly void back to the breathable human environment of the station is a sensory homecoming that is often accompanied by an overwhelming fatigue. The muscles, which have been fighting the stiff, pressurized suit for 8 continuous hours of intense labor, finally begin to relax and ache as the adrenaline fades. You feel the true, staggering toll of the mission in every joint and every fiber of your being, a weariness that is both a burden and a badge. The simple sound of the repressurization valves and the sight of your fellow crew members waiting on the other side is a powerful emotional anchor. This exhaustion is the price of the journey, the physical manifestation of the intense focus and labor required to inhabit the vacuum for a day. It is a peaceful, satisfying tiredness that comes from knowing the work is successfully done and the safety of the interior has been regained. In this moment, the airlock is the most beautiful and welcoming room in existence, a gateway back to the world of warmth, breath, and life. Finally, the act of stripping off the heavy, rigid suit reveals the physical evidence of the orbital battle, as bruises and scrapes appear on the skin. Fighting against the stiff, pressurized fabric of the extravehicular mobility unit for hours on end leaves its quiet mark on the shoulders, hands, and the feet. These small, painful reminders are a tactile testament to the sheer physical effort required to perform even the simplest tasks in the void of space. You look at the marks on your tired body with a sense of quiet pride, knowing that they were earned in the center of the ultimate arena. Each scrape is a memory of a specific struggle with a tool, a fastener, or a difficult reaching movement along the station's truss. They are the human cost of the technological triumph, a physical bridge between the soft biology of the astronaut and the hard, cold reality of the machine. These badges of honor fade over time, but the memory of the intense effort and the focus they represent remains a permanent part of the soul. As you drift closer to sleep, feeling your own body entirely free from the pressure and strain of the day, think of those marks. They are the final, tactile connection to the journey, a reminder that to walk in space is to give everything of yourself to the infinite. This infinite is not just a destination, but a state of perpetual falling that creates a profound, weightless equilibrium. These explorers are falling continuously toward the sapphire heart of the planet, yet they are moving so fast horizontally that they endlessly miss the ground. It is the fundamental paradox of orbit, where a terrifying plunge is transformed into a serene, eternal glide by the sheer magnitude of tangential velocity. If we were to look closer at the mathematics of this flight, the astronaut is effectively trapped in a curve that perfectly matches the curvature of the world below. Every second they drop toward the Earth, but their forward momentum of 17,000 miles per hour carries them far enough along the arc to stay suspended above the atmosphere. This perpetual fall creates a sensation of absolute stillness, a quiet grace where gravity's pull is balanced exactly by the energy of the flight. It is a beautiful mathematical tightrope act performed in the silent theatre of the high vacuum. You are an object in motion, a tiny moon caught in a never-ending descent that results in the most stable and peaceful flight imaginable. This perpetual motion is the foundation of the orbital life, a state where the fear of falling is replaced by the quiet wonder of never reaching the bottom. Surprisingly, the absolute safest refuge in this deadly airless environment is completely contained within a fragile human-shaped balloon of pressurized fabric. To step into the void is to entrust your survival to a multi-layered envelope of gas that actively resists the crushing, empty hunger of the surrounding vacuum. Within this small, localized atmosphere, the human body finds the only sanctuary capable of holding the fundamental pressures of life together against the void. The suit does not merely cover the explorer, it pushes back against the cosmos with a steady internal force that keeps the blood liquid and the lungs functional. If this pressure were to falter for even a moment, the biological reality of the human form would instantly unravel in the face of the unyielding vacuum. It is a striking irony that in a world of massive metallic modules and reinforced trusses, the most critical survival habitat is a flexible, soft-shelled garment. This wearable planetoid provides everything needed to endure the most hostile conditions known to science, from the solar fire to the absolute cold of the night. Every breath is a victory of engineering over the void, supported by the delicate tension of the synthetic fibers holding the air inside. It is a humble, yet magnificent fortress, a testament to the idea that the most profound protection can sometimes be found in the most flexible and intimate of structures. Extreme isolation is experienced with a unique, haunting intimacy, even while millions of people watch the live, high-definition feed of the mission from the comfort of their homes. This digital transparency creates a strange duality, where the astronaut is the centre of a global spectacle, while feeling more alone than any human being has ever been. Every move, every breath, and every muffled radio transmission is analysed by a world that remains fundamentally unreachable and distant beneath the curve of the horizon. This paradox of public solitude defines the modern era of exploration, where the most private moments of awe are shared instantaneously with the masses while the explorer remains truly solitary. As you lie in your bed, perhaps feeling the quiet, private boundaries of your own room, notice the weight of being watched by an entire species while floating in the centre of an empty sea. It is a psychological tightrope, a feeling of being both the most connected and the most isolated member of the human family at the same exact moment. Complete physical silence exists perfectly and simultaneously with the loudest, most overwhelming visual panorama imaginable to the human eye. While the ears are submerged in the mechanical whir and the internal heartbeat of the suit, the eyes are bombarded by a chaotic, high-speed parade of planetary colours and cosmic patterns. The visual noise of a massive swirling hurricane, or the blinding flash of an orbital sunrise happens in a realm where no sound can possibly follow through the empty dark. This sensory mismatch creates a dreamlike state of consciousness, as if one were watching an epic, silent masterpiece projected across the entire sky. The mind attempts to assign sounds to the visual cues, such as the roar of the wind in the clouds or the crackle of the aurora, but is met only with the steady, quiet hum of the oxygen fan. It is a profound sensory divorce that heightens the intensity of everything seen, turning the act of observation into a pure, uninterrupted internal experience that reaches the soul. If we were to look closer at this visual symphony, the lack of sound makes the colours seem more vivid and the shapes more defined against the ink-black backdrop. Every detail of the station's truss and every ripple in the Pacific Ocean is processed with a clarity that is unburdened by the distractions of ambient noise. It is a world where the eyes must do the work of all the senses, translating the silent majesty of the universe into a language the heart can understand. Moving with such incredible speed outside the station actually requires moving incredibly slow and deliberate in every physical practice. While the explorer is hurtling through space at 5 miles per second, their actual work on the station's exterior is performed with a meticulous, agonizingly slow cadence of touch and movement. Any sudden, impulsive movement could generate unintended momentum that might take minutes to correct or result in a dangerous collision with the delicate external hardware. Patience becomes a physical requirement, a survival strategy that turns the most basic mechanical task into a slow-motion ritual of absolute precision. Every push and pull is calculated, every grip on a handrail is tested, and every tool is handled with the steady care of a master watchmaker. This contrast between the staggering velocity of the orbit and the glacial pace of the work is one of the most difficult paradoxes for a new spacewalker to master. As your own body sinks deeper into its resting state, notice the slow, easy rhythm of your thoughts as the day's activities recede into the distance. In the void, this same slow rhythm is the key to managing the immense energies of the flight, turning the potential chaos of speed into the serenity of control. It is a lesson in the power of deliberation, proving that the fastest journeys often require the most careful and measured steps to reach the end. Humanity's most complex and staggering technological achievement eventually begins to feel almost as natural as swimming in a quiet, sun-drenched pool. After several hours in the vacuum, the restrictive, pressurized suit becomes a second skin, and the weightless environment begins to feel like a familiar, comfortable medium for the biological form. The brain, with its incredible capacity for adaptation, slowly stops treating the orbital reality as an emergency and starts accepting it as a new, peaceful baseline for daily existence. The golden handrails and the white modules of the station become as familiar as the furniture in your own home, providing a sense of structural comfort in the infinite. Moving hand over hand along the truss becomes an instinctive rhythmic habit that requires no conscious thought, allowing the mind to drift along with the floating body. This normalization is a quiet victory of the human spirit, a sign that we can find a sense of belonging even in the most alien of landscapes. If we were to look closer at the astronaut's face behind the gold-plated visor, we would see a look of calm, professional focus rather than one of terror or shock. They have inhabited the paradox so deeply that the impossible has become routine, and the terrifying has become a beautiful, manageable reality. It is a profound psychological homecoming, a realization that wherever the human mind goes, it eventually finds a way to make itself at home in the dark. Looking outward into the infinite, staggering depths of the universe inevitably forces the human mind to turn its gaze inward toward its own secret nature. The sheer scale of the stars and the absolute blackness of the void act as a heavy mirror, reflecting the explorer's own thoughts and feelings with a clarity that is impossible on Earth. Without the constant noise and clutter of terrestrial life, the internal voice becomes loud and clear, demanding a reckoning with the most fundamental questions of human existence. The vastness of space does not make the individual feel small so much as it makes them feel intensely, vividly present in their own singular consciousness. You find yourself contemplating your place in the grand design, wondering about the source of the spark that allows a fragile creature to observe such a massive and indifferent reality. This introspection is a natural byproduct of the isolation, a way for the mind to fill the sensory vacuum with the meaning and history of its own life. As you rest in the quiet of your own space, allow your mind to drift inward as well, exploring the peaceful landscape of your own thoughts and dreams. In the silence of the vacuum, this inner journey is the ultimate companion to the outer one, a complementary exploration of the two greatest frontiers. To look at the stars is to see the origin of our atoms, and to look inward is to see the culmination of their long, beautiful cosmic journey. Gravity appears to be entirely and blissfully absent from the orbital experience, yet it secretly dictates every single movement and orbital trajectory with an iron, invisible hand. While the astronaut feels no weight and experiences no pull toward the floor, the massive hidden force of the Earth is still the primary architect of their entire journey through the sky. It is gravity that bends the station's path into a perfect circle, preventing it from flying away into the dark and keeping it tethered to the life-giving sphere below. Every nudge of a thruster and every adjustment of a solar array is a calculated interaction with this unseen and all-encompassing field of energy. The feeling of weightlessness is not an escape from gravity, but a perfect surrender to it, an agreement to fall along the lines of force that define the local space. This invisible influence is the silent conductor of the orbital symphony, ensuring that the dance of the spheres proceeds with absolute mathematical precision and grace. This structure of hidden control is a reminder that we are always part of a larger invisible system, even when we feel entirely free and independent. Notice the gentle, reliable pressure of the mattress against your back, a tactile manifestation of the very same gravity that guides the stars across the void. In the vacuum, that force is no longer a burden to be carried, but a map to be followed, a silent cosmic guide that leads the voyager across the night. The terrifying, incomprehensible vastness of the void ultimately makes the petty terrestrial concerns back home feel entirely and beautifully trivial. From the height of 300 miles, the conflicts, the stresses, and the small irritations of daily life simply dissolve into the background noise of the beautiful rotating planet. The scale of the view is so grand that it provides a radical, long-term perspective on what truly matters to the survival and the flourishing of the human family. This triviality is not a dismissal of human experience, but a refinement of it, a focusing on the essential elements of love, wonder, and cooperation. It is a psychological cleansing that occurs naturally in the presence of the infinite, a gift of perspective that is the true treasure of the entire journey. As you drift towards sleep, let your own small worries dissolve into the quiet of the night, following the example of the explorer who has seen the world from above. Stepping out into the deadly, uncompromising vacuum of space is, quite paradoxically, the most profound and absolute embrace of life itself. To survive in an environment that is so fundamentally hostile to biology requires an intense, constant dedication to every single heartbeat and every single breath drawn in the dark. It is a state of being where the value of existence is never taken for granted, as it is being actively and technically defended with every second of the mission. The cold, silent void acts as the ultimate contrast, a dark canvas that makes the bright, warm miracle of human life shine with an incredible, incandescent intensity. By braving the darkness, the explorer reaffirms their commitment to the light, turning the act of spacewalking into a celebration of human ingenuity and spiritual resilience. You feel more alive in those few precarious hours than at almost any other time, because the stakes of living have never been higher or more clear. Ultimately, the journey through the void is not a movement away from the world, but a deeper engagement with the mystery of being a part of it. It is a final, quiet realization that we are creatures of light and air, carrying our own small suns into the dark to see what can be found. As you surrender to the infinite peace of sleep, remember that you are a part of this grand, life-affirming journey, a dreamer who belongs among the stars. To walk in space is to become a solitary moon, tethered by human ingenuity, suspended perfectly between the infinite cosmos and the fragile cradle of home. To walk in space is to become a solitary moon, tethered by human ingenuity and suspended perfectly between the infinite cosmos and the fragile cradle of home. This final realization completes the long journey, tying together the mechanical armor, the silent vacuum, and the glowing blue sphere into a single moment of absolute clarity. It is the ultimate synthesis of being, where the explorer is no longer a visitor but a part of the vast rhythmic pulse of the universe. Surprisingly, the body now begins its own final descent into the quiet safety of rest, starting at the very tips of your toes. Notice how each toe releases its lingering tension, growing heavy and still as it sinks into the soft, welcoming fabric of your sheets. The soles of your feet soften completely, losing their connection to the movements of the day as they find a deep, unmoving equilibrium. Deep within your ankles and calves, a gentle wave of relaxation flows upward, washing away the last traces of physical effort. The muscles of your lower legs become remarkably heavy, as if the very air in the room has turned into a warm, soothing liquid holding them in place. This stillness spreads through the knees, allowing the joints to settle into a natural, non-stressed alignment that requires no energy to maintain. This quiet room now becomes a sanctuary for your thighs and hips, which surrender their remaining strength to the steady support of the mattress. Every fibre of your largest muscles lets go, feeling the profound relief of being entirely unburdened by the need for balance or motion. The weight of your lower body is distributed perfectly, creating a sensation of being cradled by the very surface that holds you. If we were to look closer at the centre of your being, we would find the rhythmic rise and fall of your breath becoming slower and more effortless. Your lower back and spine release their long-held tension, melting into the softness beneath you with a sense of complete, unwavering trust. This steady, peaceful cadence of your breathing anchors your consciousness, drawing you further away from the waking world and deeper into the quiet dark. Moving toward your hands, feel the fingers curl naturally into a state of total, effortless relaxation against the cool linens. The palms of your hands and your wrists become still and heavy, followed by the complete softening of your forearms and shoulders. All the activities of the day are finished, leaving only the gentle physical reality of the air moving in and out of your lungs. The soft pillow supports the base of your skull, allowing the muscles of your neck to completely and finally let go. Your jaw unclenches and drops slightly, creating a space of ease and quiet within your face as the tongue rests heavily. Every tiny muscle around your eyes and across your forehead smooths out, becoming as calm and clear as the air in this darkened room. Your breath is now a slow, velvety rhythm that moves through you like a gentle tide, carrying you toward the edge of a deep and restorative sleep. Each exhalation draws you further into the warmth of the bed, where the boundaries of the self begin to soften and dissolve into the quiet. The room is a sanctuary of peace, and you are its only inhabitant, drifting in a state of pure, uncomplicated grace. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.